In 3, 2. Hello, and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of GRAPPL. I'm Benno.
I'm JP.
And I'm Matty.
And we're here for another month. It's officially May. Well, not at the time we're recording. We're calling it the month of Kings. Is that what we're calling it this month, Matty? We've got you here on the intro to run through the schedule. Just been with our patrons / YouTube members in the pre-show as we ran through some of their ideas for some of the shows we have coming up in May. But we've got a few doozies here, haven't we, mate?
Oh, mate, I'm looking forward to this one, Ben. It's been great piecing these together, and as you say, the patrons come up with a few shouts that we had to kind of politely decline because we've got pretty much what they're saying roundabout already down. So, really looking forward to this month, mate.
It's going to be a lot. Going to be a lot to follow. Last month, obviously, we did. Feels like remember WrestleMania, JP? That was apparently in April. Well, we did that. What? We did that whole weekend. I know. But yeah, fuck me. That was April. So May feels like it's going to be a lot easier. But we got through it. To be fair, we had a corker of a month. A lot of positive feedback on the month as a whole. So massive thanks to people out there. Definitely loved the shows we did this month. 5-1. The pick and mix was definitely a corker of an idea.
Oh, yeah.
And we had King of the Mountain. You and Cameron, who came to us with his grappling with philosophy show that, we were all a bit like, I don't know if we're up for this, lads. Me personally, I was like, I don't know, this feels like JP stuff. I'll let JP and Ewan do like some kind of dissertation on what wrestling actually means. But I feel like we all upped our games for that one. Loads of great feedback for that too. And that was very much the brainchild of Ewan, but also, you did the Lord's work in the background on that one, JP. We found out exactly what wrestling is. We know now.
Yeah.
We did. Sorted, and we all completely agreed on all terms and definitions and how people will debate it as well.
JP, did we all get a C? Did we all get a C passing grade?
Well, it's not like that these days, is it?
Professor John Paul.
Right. Is it a 4 or a 5 if we're going in GCSE money?
Is that what
these
they do
days?
now?
No.
Oh, is that what it is?
0 to 9, mate. I can only describe it as fucking scandalous. Frankly.
It does sound wild.
I feel as old as when my mum and dad used to talk about O levels, and I'd be like, what's an O level?
What was wrong with A, B, C, D, E?
Yeah.
Like, am I mad? Has it done something wrong? As the alphabet, like it's just like, no, we had to move away for that. For 9 numbers, of which 2 or 3 of them mean exactly the same thing. So it's just like we're wasting everybody's time here.
Did you do AS levels, or was that just like man of my age things?
Sixth form. I done that in sixth form.
Fake A levels that mean nothing now. Yeah. You tell the job you got them, and they're like, what nice one. You might as well just write it on your own on paper what you got. Do employers actually check? Sorry, I'm going a bit sidebar. Do they check? Is there a way of finding out? Do they, JP? Okay, better not lie.
Oh, in my game they do.
I'll tell the truth on my German GCSE and what I did.
Mate, I have to turn with GCSE certificates now. I'm 45. What the hell is that? I took
Where'd I get them from?
30 years ago.
Have they not wasted away, JP?
You might be lying. Well, I don't remember much of it, to be honest with you. It's like, it wasn't like the kind of, it's absolutely mad, but they asked this stuff.
My certificates are like in a box underneath a pile of power slams or something. They'll be all the same. I wouldn't even know where it is. Wouldn't know where to look.
I've got some things in a box that I've had to keep. But JP, mate, is there no sellotape keeping yours together or not? This is still good.
Mate,
didn't know they had printers.
They didn't do it with like the fucking it wasn't like the Bayeux tapestry when I was doing these qualifications. That we were studying. The fucking that kind of stuff, not moving image yet, nothing crazy like that at that point in time.
Oh, but we went to school, so I feel more
loved it.
I don't know.
Always great.
I'm going to start every sentence now, Matty, by saying, "Well, as an intellectual," or
Yeah.
Don't
let that catch on. Not even in joking terms. Don't.
But yeah, it was a really good chat. Yeah, well, that's it. I think we delved into like the Spotify algorithm for some reason thinks we spent 10 minutes talking about Steve Austin in the late 90s, which sounds like us, but we didn't. Maybe it came up. We spent most of it talking the bid ideas, didn't we? What is kayfabe? Whether wrestling's a sport or not. I still think it is. We had a good conversation over that. But That's one I don't know. Did we settle on that? Did we decide it was a sport or not? Or is it performance?
You were
or
pushing for it to be drama? A sport, Benno. You were the one pushing.
Yeah, I shocked myself, to be honest. You're
going to have the Olympics, mate, if you had your way. Yeah.
Well, I just kind of think, you go to a wrestling school, you put your knee pads on, you put your boots on. What are you doing all day?
So you're the wrestler you see out of us for, so that's why you're going like that, aren't you?
It's interesting. No, I almost think the training is more a sport than the actual performance. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like when they try and get a daughter for like DBS checks and stuff in this country. Like, what's the difference between going to a wrestling school, putting on all the gear and taking bumps versus like doing Muay Thai or, karate or anything like that, jiu-jitsu? It's all, what would you say if you went to jiu-jitsu on a Sunday? You said you were doing a sport, wouldn't you? All we need, like, as we said on the podcast, like Gareth was saying, the problem is there's no like real formal competitive side to it, so we need to do, what was it, Eric Bischoff's plan way back in the day, to have like, we could have pro wrestling at the Olympics where like a couple of like old bookers sit back and star rate you and mark you out of 10 on the different parts of wrestling. Just make it a sport like that. Make it a sport that gets judged. There's a few of those that are a little bit ropey, that the ones the posh people do, as I was saying, JP, on horses, they count as sports. I feel like wrestling can.
Yeah. It's great. And it's the horse doing the work here and not getting the medal. Can I just throw that into the mix? I've always thought if you're relying on an animal like there as well, it's the animal doing the work. Like, don't get me wrong, I feel like jockeys do something, yes, but who's doing the fucking running? Like, who's doing the heavy lifting? Who's jumping over the actual fence? It's just like a cox in a rowing team. Really.
I think
darts is a sport, come on.
I think when you said the sport line,
archery is a sport, darts is a sport.
There's another example.
Yeah.
When you said the sport line early, I think I went in early with the F word, with the fake shout. But I promise the listeners, it doesn't just end there. We actually do have a good discussion.
We do go deeper than that.
Yeah, you have a big argument, and someone goes, "You saying it's fake," and then it's just like somebody comes in behind.
Andy's backing up the jockeys.
You like he's a Q80 TV host or something.
But yeah, we went into all that. Like I say, went into what is kayfabe, what is our social media used in wrestling these days as well. Feel very enlightened coming off the back of it. Any lessons you guys come from it? Was it just we can all be right and we can all be wrong? I think that's the biggest lesson I learned from it. Whatever happened to actual conversation and discourse? It doesn't have to be
discussion.
Red team, blue team, does it?
Yeah, 100%. JD, and I know you're the same, mate, aren't you?
Oh, there was a line that Ewan said about how it was like, set, like, it's like, what are the terms of engagement? It's like getting back to it and realizing at the end of the day, we all bring really something entirely different to the party of when we're like kind of watching it, and it's not all the same, and we get different things at different times from it. Depends where you are in the world as well. There's so much for this stuff, and it's never spoken about. And I always think if you want wrestling to be taken seriously, in a lot of ways, it's conversations like this. So if you do want to hear that, because it's not always intellectual, patreon.com/grapple. There we go. Went into a plug as well at the same time. Gorgeous.
Well, on that point, not being intellectual, might sum up a couple of the shows we got coming up in May as well for patrons. And,
I disagree.
And YouTube subscribers. There's some there. But yeah, our patrons have, like I say, just filled in the blank for our fourth show. But Matty, I'll let you do the big unveiling. What have we got coming up for people in May?
Well, here we go. When the lovely graphic comes onto the screen, because it's amazingly show, Benno. It's amazingly put together by yourself.
Still a work in progress. We've got, I might edit this.
We have coming up. We've got a mixtape, the best of Kurt Angle, which the discourse has been going around for a couple of months now, isn't it? Has Kurt Angle ever had a 5-star match? Well, we're going to pick our favourite Kurt Angle matches and the best Kurt Angle matches.
2 each was the idea.
2 each. We're going to put that to the test, and let's see if we think he's had a 5-star match or close enough. That'll be a good one. I think we've been wanting to do that for a while, haven't we? Talk about Kurt.
I'm very interested in what two people pick, like whether it's going to be like TNA era, whether it's all going to be, which is kind of the theme of this month's show, like that 2000. This month's shows 2000, 2001 kind of era. I think there might be some crossover there. I don't know. Might even go very early Kurt, as was suggested by one of our patrons.
Well, that's it. Well, I think tying into our next show there, I think the Shane McMahon match should be banned from that mixtape because
it will
coming up as flashback, we've got King of the Ring 2001, which is an era. Once again, it's an era we don't really talk about on this podcast as much. We're not. It's always 97, isn't it? And we started 2006. I quit last year as well, so 2001 will be a good one to pick. So, anyone got any memories of this except for Kurt and Shane? Or
only obviously the Benoit Jericho on the way. It works out well as a follow up to the next one we're gonna talk about. Cause again, they're all kind of, there's a bit of a theme here, Kings maybe in a little way. But yeah, like I obviously that Jericho Benoit point when they were just at that tippy top about to go over, and a certain somebody we're about to mention was out of the picture as a result. But yeah, that's the biggest thing I remember from 01.
Right, and that leads in again, all bleeds in, as Benno said, to the deep cut we're going to be doing of Paul. We're going to title it, but it's Triple H in the year 2000, and it's one that, to be fair, Ben, you've been, high on. You always mentioned that this is the only year you actually like Triple H, so it's about time we actually started all watching it together here.
The IWC Triple H year, isn't it? 2000. Like, dude, I've been excited to do this one for a while. So I think we're kind of going to go in order, aren't we? We'll probably do the patrons pick first, and then it'll be the Angle mixtape, and then the deep cut, and then we'll follow up with 2001 and the flashback, which is like the fallout of it. But 2000 was the year where, like, we talked a lot about, like, intellectually, like what makes wrestling, and our fandoms and kayfabe and stuff. The year 2000 was the year where I almost feel like I was awakened as like a smart wrestling fan, and the first thing I did as a smart wrestling fan, Matty, was cheer the heels and boo the faces, because apparently that's what you do. That's what we talked about, because you're so smart you don't realize that the heels actually want to be booed. And I fucking love Triple H in the year 2000. I think he's a cunt now, but like it's kind of like probably a widely held thing that's his best year. Obviously there's the Cactus Jack stuff we can get into, Kurt Angle's knocking around as well, Benoit, there's all kinds.
The Rock, obviously.
The Rock is the biggest thing, which ties into one of the suggestions we got from our patrons to do kind of Triple H versus Rock. But it's a weird year because there's a lot of that. It's almost like they're feuding with each other, and then they both kind of move on to different things, and then they come back to it, and then they move on to different things, and then they come back to it through the years. So it'll be interesting to see how that holds up. Loads of it. I'm wondering if it'll hold up to scrutiny, to be honest, Matt, whether it'll actually be as good as I remember.
But also the patrons will be pleased to know, Ben, because you've given me free reign on the angles. You said there's going to be a must watch, there's going to be a sickos, there's going to be a big list. You said get the angles together, so can't wait to get them down and sent over, mate.
Look forward to adding 10 at the end of it when you're done, mate. Can't wait. Rikishi one's got to be in there. Make sure we get that in there.
Yeah, that's in there. Them TV matches. But JP, you looking forward to that one, mate?
I mean, obviously, it feels like a villain's origin story, isn't it? But I mean, I don't have to be calling it Paul. I'm more likely to just call it cunt and just have done with it, really, about it. But it's his origin story. I think I can't remember too much about it, but it's at the point in time where it's just like, he's not like taking the piss as he does soon enough in there as well. So looking for hey. I think Sean was a prick, but it was great coming back and having a look at him. So, like, it's another one of the lads.
I've got a comment on Platt there. That Jericho Last Man Standing match is a forgotten classic. That is one I can't wait to go back and watch. But yeah,
we might be in touch, Connor.
I think so.
Me, you, and Matthew will work together.
We'll Connor, be on standby, mate. You'll see the sign in the sky when we're ready to hit you up. And also, as you said, Benno, the patrons pick, which has been decided in the pre-show there, and we've all gone for Gareth's vote included as well, because he put it in our chat, of the OGs.
Big Boss Man in 1990. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
That's what you picked when we actually voted. It's the OGs v LAX. It's the Civil War from TNA in about 2017, 2018. So that's one I can't wait to go back and relive, because I was watching that at the time, JP, and some wild stuff, to say the least, on that.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what? It's another one of these shows where there's audio of us talking about this as it was going on. And so it's going to be fascinating to go back to that. And we watched it live. It was just a thing, wasn't it, that we put on the clip of it, and it was just being amazed by the entire thing. And it was in a pretty much desert of shite. It was one of the few oases of that era of TNA as well, and it's got Conan in it as well. But he always ties this up on there. But the Richie shooting is just like, I mean, you said as well, it got very intellectual. We're talking about great acting with that, aren't we? Like, if you want to think about it, like you've got epic drama in Paul. You've got some brilliant acting in this feud as well. 2001 flashback. You got like good action scenes, haven't you, with Shane and Kurt Angle, and you've got just like consistency of work rate with the Angle mixtape as well. So yeah,
it all ties together nicely, and I think the overall theme is like, do they be the cunts of Move King of the Ring from June to May? Feels wrong it being in May at the end of this month, but obviously we'll have a King of the Ring review at the end of the month, and we can tie in the King of the Ring 2001, the King of the Ring. Did Angle win it in 2000?
He did.
Angle.
He did.
We've got the King of, I was going to say King of Kins, the King of Cunts. He's
a King of the Ring as well. 97. He did win it as well.
I was tempted to do that one as the flashback. I could always pull it audible. We should do King of the Ring 96 and talk about how we didn't win the King of the Ring because of the Ultimate Warrior and the curtain call and all of that stuff. And of course, King Shagger too. There you go. Yeah. And for the patrons pick, we've got King himself, Eddie Kingston, for the OGs. So tentative tie in there, but it all works. And on top of that, of course, spotlight every week, weekend show every week as well, live for our live YouTube viewers. You can get that for the low price of $3.99, and for all our patrons on that tier 2. And as well as that, Matty, Bretro's going to be back at the end of the month, and more than that, Time too makes its grand return. Do you want to reveal what the era is for that one?
It is, and that's coming up. It's been a long time coming, no pun intended, but it's April 1998. So there's a lot of we're in that, as we always say, it's all that era, Benno, of watching TFI Friday. Not too much away, but there's a TFI Friday episode on there which I've been wanting to dissect. So looking forward to talking all things that, and it'd be good to have Liam on, of course, done the listing for that. So
just Liam.
Nobody's done the listing for that, of what I said, Ben. What I said. Oh, yeah. But what can we announce then?
Anybody else good on it?
Well, Gareth's there as always. He's always great, Gareth, isn't he? And this month only, as a substitute, Benno's making his debut, JP. He's stepping into your shoes for a month only, and he's been gagging to get on, to be fair.
I am.
So he's here now. He's here.
I am so looking forward to this.
I hope I am. Anyway, Matty told me 20 minutes ago. I hope that's true.
You know what we're doing now?
I'm so excited. I feel like I'm king of the mountain. I think I've worked my way in with the lads. I'm doing time.
You're gonna hate me now, though. We're going 90 minutes on sport, mate. So you know like with that.
It's going again now.
It's about when you watch Everton, mate.
Oh, that's true. I might have actually been asked back then as well. That probably helps too. Oh, I'm so excited, lads. I'm so excited to be a guest on time. I'm going to step back. Liam can, of course, lead the way, and you lads as well. And I'll never fill JP's shoes on this show. It's 1 month only, and I'll keep the seat warm, JP. But I'm as excited as anybody to be on time.
It's going to be brilliant.
I'll be out this month as well. So, I'll be stepping into the hot seat. I'm genuinely cheddar, Matty. I am.
Yeah, no, you can tell. I can genuinely tell as well. But
I feel like when I went on post the first time, I was like, I'm on with John and Way. It's amazing. I'm on with that. To you, Gareth, Liam.
It's Liam.
Big fan, mate. Big fan.
Liam and yourselves, it's just going to be used to talking about random stuff. I mean, Gareth is just sitting on our hands for 2.5 hours, isn't it, really? But no, it's as we always say, and you guys always say, it's a loaded month coming up in May. It really, really is.
Oh, so it is.
Good time to get involved.
As you always say, JP, patreon.com/grapple and youtube.com/@grapple to get it all. Probably enough plugs, I'd say, unless there's anything I'm forgetting. But before we let you go, Matthew, we're about to get into the main show. Any thoughts on our first subject, Tony Khan, or just hang up now, let you let you go?
I want to get these in about.
Bye, Matt.
I mean, what can be said that hasn't already been said over the whole of wherever you.
I just want to know what your reaction was to the angle last week on it. Have you watched last week's Dynamite yet? Before we let you go,
I've watched, as I say, I was watching it, but you know what happened to Steph, and I still haven't caught up on it. She literally, I got the phone call as I was halfway through Dynamite, and I had to go to the A&E with her. Genuine story.
She's all right, though, isn't she?
She's fine. She's laid up. Yeah, she's laid up, but she's fine.
She'll be in profit by next month. Everyone.
She'll get better. But Ben, I'm serious, and I'm not joking. I put a tweet out. It was one of them, when you wake up and you're not even in a bad mood or you're not even a bit miserable. It's just brightened me day up even more when it didn't need to be brightened up. I couldn't stop laughing all day long. People in work were like looking at me like, what's it with you? And I couldn't explain to them why I was laughing and why I was so happy. Honestly, nothing's got me like that in ages. But it's not even just like as a taking the piss thing. I'm probably genuinely interested in where this goes as a storyline. That's the whole thing about it. That's driving me in at the same time. So for as funny and as fucking crap as his bumping was, I mean, how funny was that? Dig to the stomach, and he put both hands down. Let's be honest. He can't even take a fucking... I know he's not a wrestler, but fuck me. 2 hands.
I had to rewind and watch it back about 10 times. I think I've replayed that clip a million times.
But that was hilarious, right? But then to actually see him take the Meltzer driver was just... That was just the stamp that I needed. It was honestly, guys, unbelievable stuff. And like, honestly, it was so good. But what did
now you like AEW?
But what are they doing? Exactly. I'm so conflicted. It's like, what are they doing? But I'll be watching because obviously Ken's coming in. He's coming in tomorrow, isn't he? So I will catch up. That. Yeah, he's going to be coming in, and I can see a big heel turn on him coming up.
Where does Tony Khan's bumping them fit in the who we put him with? Like Bischoff, Vince Russo, Dixie Carter.
I mean, let's be honest, Linda McMahon taking a stunner was better than that. Let's be fair. There's a bit of like, it was just, I'll just say, the Meltzer driver was fine, obviously, because they're doing all the work, of course, and they're protecting him. But what was he doing on that bump to the stomach? You know, just go.
And you know, he was practicing that all day as well. I bet. Yeah, he was backstage. That's the reason Dan was such a fucking mess last week. He was probably backstage practicing that bump over and over again. It's like the Mr. Burns thing. We did 40 takes and that was the best one. Like,
oh mate, honestly, just
I banned you from the weekend show. You weren't allowed to get those takes in.
No, but it was. I feel like it's so far removed now, but it just I had to give me force because it was so funny. And I just can't wait to see what is he going to be on telly more? Is that way of him being writ off? We can only see what happens. Yeah. So yeah,
right up your street.
It is, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next. But guys, thank you for having me on. The schedule's all there. Hope everyone enjoys the month ahead. Have a good show. I'll be listening in the morning, guys. So yeah, thank you very much.
We'll see you later, Matt.
Good night, Matt.
See you later, guys. Ta-ra, mate.
Well, now we got the fun stuff out the way. JP, we should talk all matters AEW. We got some WWE to talk about, some Vince McMahon related news as well. But wow, we're on it. We need to start with Tony Khan and his wild week. Thought it was bad enough when we did the weekend show on Friday, JP, and we literally spent an hour dissecting all of that stuff and dissecting and being all over the basically the television in general, with his neck brace appearing on NFL.com, all kinds of mainstream press picking up, even the BBC picked up a lot of his comments, and it continued on through the weekend and did get quite a bit more serious as well, as Tony Khan did during an interview covering the draft. Noted Jaguars chief football strategy officer. I didn't realise that was his full title for Tony Khan. Did go on TV and talk about about WWE being the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. It was one of them. It was funny because the weekend show finished and I was ready to just kind of laugh at it all and kind of like, okay, well, let's continue this silly Tony Khan tour of what's going on in the wrestling world. He's keeping the name AEW afloat. He's getting a good bit of publicity all over the place. I think we were just wrapping up weekend show and it was like, oh, Tony Khan's on the NFL network right now, so we're gonna get to see him there as well. He's getting all over the place, and then he drops this clanger. Go to you first, JP. Obviously, it's dominated the discourse over the weekend. Obviously, there's more Tony Khan quotables across the place, but I think we've got to start there. The full quote is Tony Khan calling AEW the Pepsi of pro wrestling, and saying that WWE is the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. And yeah, the host reaction said it all as they kind of uncomfortably tried to move things on, made a bit of a joke about Tony going into full plug mode, and then yeah, we quickly moved on. But yeah, dominated the discourse over the weekend. What's been your reaction, JP?
Do you know what? What I couldn't. It's there are many issues with this because ultimately, really, what it does is it makes light of what is currently going on. Very serious allegations, and it's bad because it kind of ends up overshadowing it in that way. Like, and that was a thing that was like kind of like a bit annoying. Also, why do you make the comparison? You go, we're the Pepsi of professional wrestling. Surely the analogy is like, and they're the Coke of professional wrestling, which would be a decent analogy for where they are. But you just drop Harvey Weinstein into the mix and you go, what the fuck? Like it's really, it's such an odd comment, and you can see why he's doing it. And it's just like, I'm going to appear on TV like he's Andy fucking Kaufman wearing a neck brace, including this, because at some point I'm going to go, well, you've got a neck brace on. Why is that? Well, I was given an EV, a Tony Khan driver on AEW TV. And like you say, he gets to sort of do those kind of cheap plugs on there as well. It's also very USA Today. I don't know if this is kind of good. I don't think this comes into the camp of good coverage. You're on the NFL Network. You're wearing the neck brace. They're going to ask you about that. You talk about AEW. You do it all very tongue in cheek, and by tonally, like they were in on the joke. And then he does that, and you just think, like that's just it's quite childish. Is how I felt about it.
Yeah,
not a good look.
He's come back and defended it, obviously saying, when TMZ asked him, I think it was Mojo Rawley that asked him on behalf of TMZ, which was a weird image. I didn't know he was doing that now. Didn't know TMZ was still a thing, to be honest. Turns out it is. They got a whole channel and everything on American cable, but slash my IPTV. But says here that he thinks he got tons of coverage for AEW, and it's important to say he thinks AEW's the best company in the world, and he kind of moved it back to that conversation about AEW having better events. That's where I am on it. Like, it's funny, we recorded that Grappling with Philosophy show over the weekend. And for all my talk on that show of like, we can all agree to disagree in that. I think during that show, I was literally arguing with a dickhead on Twitter who was like coming at me for having a go at Tony Khan and the way Candy presented those comments, because I was talking about that and not talking about Vince McMahon. It was like, dude, like, you're not like, I don't expect everybody to listen to everything we do or watch everything we do, but I would put us up there, JP, when it comes to actually, coverage of this. We're nowhere near in the league of like Brandon Thurston and John Pollock, but as far as making sure, I think the Vince McMahon / WWE story has always been, front and center whenever we covered WWE. But this idea that you can't hold that view and also think that Tony Khan, like you said there, is kind of lessening the issue with the way that he used it, is balmy to me. Grown-ups can hold two thoughts at once. I don't think we can absolutely, and I think categorically on the show, our history shows, we've condemned, obviously Vince for the very, very worst crimes that have happened under his watch, condemned the WWE for the people who knew and the people who encouraged it and allowed, that workplace to be as it is. And we've got more stories on that coming up on the show as well. I think it's something we should always continue to shine a light on. And we can hold that view and also think that Tony Khan is, using it for his own benefit, really. He's using it in a tit-for-tat wrestling war. He's using it in the type of wrestling war that I kind of find myself getting pulled into on Twitter this week, this Team Red versus Team Blue nonsense that goes on, where it's like, either WWE is entirely evil and AEW is the force of good in wrestling, or, the other way around. You can't have, like, any kind of nuanced view. And, yeah, that is kind of my take. It's, like, it's horrendous and is actually ultimately correct. Tony Khan's, I think, overall point is, again, I think, like you said, WWE are more the Weinstein company than Weinstein himself. Weinstein himself remains Vince McMahon, but the Weinstein company and, as all the other companies involved, absolutely deserve scrutiny as well. While that can be true, Tony Khan's the wrong messenger for it. Tony Khan lost, for me, that moral high ground when he reacted to the Chris Jericho stories with the way he did, with the silly hat on his head, and refused to answer questions about that. We still don't know if there was an investigation. We still don't have real comment from Tony Khan on that. And instead, we have Chris Jericho on TV using that situation for heat. That's pretty fucking gross as far as I'm concerned. Again, in the grand scheme of things, compared to Vince McMahon, you can compare yourself. Doesn't mean all things are equal. Just means that's bad too. And then, the biggest one, having Ric Flair on TV, which is, again, in light of the allegations against Ric Flair that everybody knows, and everybody condemned at the time when Dark Side of the Ring covered the story, coincidentally with Chris Jericho presenting it, to then put him on your TV. Like, once you've made that decision, and they were cowardly with the way they did it, they put him on TV, and Tony Khan, unlike everybody else he's ever done with who debuts on AEW, never mentioned it on his own Twitter, you know, kind of hid from the story. Seems like Ric Flair's gone now. But once you've done that, again, nowhere near as bad as the gigantic, you know, historic, you know, company-wide allegations that are against WWE. But once you do that, you can't be the messenger for this anymore. Like, it just makes me react like, well, get your own house in order first before you start throwing these shots out. And again, you're throwing these shots out because it's a tit-for-tat wrestling war. You're not throwing it out because you actually care about the culture of abuse that Vince McMahon and WWE have covered up and existed over these years. You know, you're doing it because you want to paint AEW as the good guys. You want to go on a promotional offensive. And, you know, I love a good message board poster as much as anybody. I kind of enjoy the shit talking back and forth between WWE and AEW. But like I say, you know, when you're using it for that, you lose the moral high ground. And when you've made the unfortunate decisions Tony Khan has made over the last 12 months, you've lost the moral high ground there. You can't be the messenger for that anymore. And I think both things can be true. I think the WWE, you know, situation and the Vince situation can be ultimately the most horrible thing in wrestling. It deserves the coverage it gets. But Tony Khan's house isn't clean either. And yeah, I think it's just kind of gross.
Do you know what I was reminded by? It's like when Logan Roy plays the Nirvana song "Rape Me," when there's the allegation. Not Logan Roy, Kendall Roy plays that at like a press conference, and it's just like a really childish edgelord joke, like kind of like thing to do about obviously, which is the story in the show is about this kind of like historic sex abuse, and it was like that kind of spoilt kid behavior where I still think I can say whatever I want. And he doesn't do. He just isn't a good messenger. I think when it comes to PR and everything else, he's just sort of like all over the place. And I think it just comes through being spread really thin. And you know, we've said about this for a while. It's just like he needs some bloody time off at the very least, and it needs to prove that it's on its own 2 feet. Maybe this will happen if the deal gets into place. Like, and that's the other thing as well, like all the various TV machinations as well.
There's an air of desperation though around it all, isn't there? Like,
yeah,
it's proper throwing shit at the wall, like down to the angle we just laughed about, down to airing the Punk footage the other week, down to this going on mainstream TV with his neck brace on. Like, he's clearly in like some kind of mode right now where, you know, it's like, I'm guessing we're at crunch time when it comes to that deal, but fuck me.
Well, the fear I have is he's behaving, dare I say it at times, and I know it's a WCW 2000 comment, but there's Russo elements to the behavior. Yeah. And you go to yourself, well, you were meant to be the guy who you read the Wrestling Observers, no? And I'm assuming you've got a few quid. You could read the back issues as well. You could have them fucking posted if he sees fit. No, still have the physical collection. So surely you'd be aware of like what happens when you do, like when you behave in this kind of way and you're very erratic around the company. And lo and behold, he's kind of he does it at points, and it's just like you weren't embarrassing, and now there's a point where it's just like some of this behavior it's really cringe, and this isn't just like not just tribalism, because like you said before, like the WWE trying to claim, he just gives them an opportunity to claim some moral high ground that they don't deserve because of just the systemic nature of their kind of culture of abuse and horrible behavior. But that's probably part of the problem.
And the defense here, people say he's shining a light on it. It's like, I don't think it shines a light in the right way, because all it does is galvanize the idiots on. I'm not both sides in this. You know, again, the WWE end is far worse, but the fucking idiots who want to defend that in WWE, and they are the lowest of the low when you talk about people, it brings them all out the woodwork. And then on the AEW side, it brings people out the woodwork who want to be like, well, you know, he's bringing it to attention, and it's like, dude, like, you know why he's doing it? He's doing it to get you lot to cheerlead AEW, and that's not good either, you know. And again, like I if you gave me the choice of two promotions, I'd absolutely choose AEW at any time. I'm not, you know, the WWE fanboy. I can get you can get posted as for daring to criticize AEW these days. Like, absolutely, that would be my choice. Absolutely, I almost was definitely a point in my life, you know, a couple of years ago where I saw Tony Khan as the good guy in this, and I'm personally quite disappointed that we're in this position where, you know, he has, I think, let people down with the way he's dealt with the Jericho situation and the Flair situation. I wish his house was cleaner and he could, you know, say these types of things about WWE if they were coming from a genuine place. But, you know, that's all that's happened there. He's galvanized that, like, and I don't buy this argument that, well, he's making the Vince stuff the headline again. He isn't. It was a headline already. We waste, not even waste, spend lots of time on this podcast talking about a very horrible subject, which is the Vince allegations. They get plenty of coverage, serious coverage, maybe not even enough coverage, but without Tony Khan turning it into a WWE versus AEW clown show. Like, that conversation existed with or without Tony Khan. And now the conversation, and we're talking about Tony Khan because he's made it that way, is about Tony Khan and his comments. And I don't think it achieved that alleged good either.
Yeah, and that's it. And this is the problem, is it? And it's that, you know, TV networks who are in precarious positions, and media conglomerates are like, and if all of the stuff, like you hear the dueling stories about the stuff with like the NBA, for example, being the NBC putting a bid in for $2.5 billion a year, which means if they manage to get that away from Warner Brothers Discovery, yes, they'll be saving some money by not paying for those rights, but also at the same time, there's the issue about the less of the carriage fees and what it does for the station, because it seems to be like so heavily built around it. It's like, you do look at him and think, is this a guy that you want to be doing kind of long-term business with? And I have to say, and we'll talk about when we get to the like the TV as well. You look at some of the stuff, like kind of quite basic stuff, and it's just like, yeah, this is good, but why isn't this being fucking promoted? Like, there's whole other kind of like issues regarding like planning and structure and things like that.
He's a very distracted man right now. Like, yeah, I said to you on the weekend show, like, is this angle to write him off, to get him off TV, to get him, you know, again, NFL drafts going on, Fulham are going to be active in the transfer market as the Premier League window grinds to a close. I'm guessing just putting stuff together, you know, that we're at a pretty, you know, important stage in the negotiations for AW's next TV deal. And it seems to be that way. He's not traveling to the shows this week. You know, the big thing around Dynamite is who's going to be the authority figure. And, you know, there'll be people who've seen Dynamite by the time they listen to this. I'm guessing it's Kenny Omega, and I'm guessing we're doing something like that on the TV. Authority figures, that's what we need in wrestling. But it says something, you know, and I said to you on the weekend show, JP, it really stuck out to me at the pay-per-view weekends when he said that he can't hold this, nothing's forever, you know, he can't hold that position as Booker forever. Like, this is you know, clearly a Tony Khan, you know, different Tony Khan compared to, you know, where he was a couple of years ago when it was basically over my dead body at handover. Suddenly we're seeing Tony Khan, you know, not at TV. He's going to be away from working from Jacksonville this week. And yeah, it's happened before, but it's been very rare when it's happened. It kind of tells you there's a lot going on outside of what we're seeing on the TV. And yeah, be daft to say it's not affecting the actual output on the TV as well.
Yeah, and it will have that impact. And do you know what? It needs to happen. And there's going to be issues. There's going to be stuff. And there's going to be, I think in my case, like, there's going to be the need for me to reflexively criticize stuff that I don't like and do like the kind of like the blame game stuff. But his was never really a sustainable position, because the nature of a booker isn't sustainable, because it relies on creativity. So you do need to share things around. You do need like a kind of an extra bit of vision, and that's part of like the situation here is how is that going to look. Now obviously this is what he should be doing in many ways. It's like the Fulham stuff. He doesn't need to be directly involved in who is going to replace Raul Jimenez. Like there's stuff that like he can sit on the sidelines. The thing he should be working on is this deal, and instead he just like it's more like kind of he's behaving like a bit of a clown. Which again, just a, you know,
yeah, and he seems to think like obviously this will help with the deal. I'm guessing, you know, being all over TV and drawing on these eyeballs to AEW. It's a risky strategy. Let's see how it plays off. In some famous words, but yeah, it's a very different Tony Khan. We're seeing over there the last week, and it's something that
you sounded like.
Going to look at.
For a second, you sounded like that commentator. You sounded like Jason Bateman in Dodgeball. You know, that's a brave strategy, Con. Yeah.
Let's see how it pays off. I had that gif in my mind when I said it. But what do we think? You know, we're about to get into like the AEW TV and such, and obviously we got more on that later. Some more Tony Khan comments, and there's you know, we will be talking in detail about the more on the Vince McMahon WWE situation as well. But how do you think it's affected AEW TV over the last weeks? I feel like it's been an under-talk thing. like, I feel like this last week of AWTV was the most undercooked it's been in a while. Like, I'm not saying there wasn't good stuff. There absolutely was across all the shows: Dynamite, Collision, Rampage. I can point to at least 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 things on each of those shows that I would say, in a vacuum, was good. But like, it does feel like there's a little bit of an eye off the ball, and it does feel like there's just a bit of a, you know, an odd feel about the place. Obviously, we can get into the ins and outs of a Collision in a bit, but I think it's best summed up by, I think, Swerve Strickland, JP, and his like the follow up like to Dynasty, because we're in a very important point right now with AEW where, like, yeah, the pay per views happened. With another one of those conversations where it's been great pay per view. How about the follow up? What have you made of the follow-up? We were very critical of, Swerve's placement on Dynamite last week, and the fact that he was in the second segment and didn't have anything to say. I think they alleviated some of those concerns by putting him out on Collision for that, what looks to be a monster opening quarter. One of the biggest audiences I think AEW will do all year, at least for the Swerve promo segment of it. So you can kind of argue mission accomplished a little bit there as well. But I don't know whether that was a reaction to the criticism of Dynamite or it was always the plan. But wasn't advertised on Dynamite. Found out about it, in the days later. It just all feels a little bit messy and just. Yeah, it doesn't feel like the ideal follow-up for Swerve. I've got issues with Ospreay's follow-up coming off, the Bryan 5-star match. And obviously Bryan's off TV selling that, but that's all been a bit weird. And just in general, it's been a weird hodgepodge of a week as far as AEW TV goes. Not necessarily bad when you talk the individual stuff, but just as an overall, extremely weird.
Really weird. Do you know how weird it was? When I watched Collision, it was like, I'm liking this, but I'm simultaneously disappointed and very underwhelmed. Like, I'm watching it and I'm going, I'm enjoying watching Grizzle Young Vets here. I'm not excited because it's just been sort of thrown out there in what appeared to be like it was a clip, it wasn't on TV. So I was like, was that on? And we just missed it and we just never spoke about it at the time. It was just like a social media clip. It was like, okay, right, they're just sort of doing that, are they?
Phoenix and Roosh come back, both big comebacks.
Cross
back-to-back segments. No promotion.
Phoenix should be like, sorry, do you know what? You're talking about like, who should be facing Roderick Strong, potentially beating him? Ray Phoenix. That would be the kind of guy you'd go with. And you build up to it and you go, it's going to be his big return. And you go, maybe push him as a proper single star. Because I've always thought there's been potential from that. I like the match with the man formerly known as Taurus. The Beast Mortos. I thought that was like a cracking lucha match. Seeing Martin Stone reappear in just a version of himself from much earlier in his career against Roosh, I was like, I like these, but why is it just dropped into the show? That's just like, it feels quite lazy. Like, these are people who they should be players. Should be portrayed as that.
Saw Brian Alvarez talk about it, the Phoenix and Roosh thing was particularly what he took issue with. And again, he didn't say it in these words, but like for me, Ray Phoenix coming back onto Collision should get more promotion than it just being a random match with another person Alex Abrahantes manages, like a commander or somebody. Like, it got that level of promotion, graphic and match that night. It's one of those things, like, I think this is the common thread about all the different issues kind of right now in AEW. Is it's written on a notebook that Tony Khan's got somewhere, but as far as actually making it to TV, like, there's just like, it's headcanon. It's like he knows what's going on. It's a bit like that, that Wild Battle Royal he did last week. He knew the rules to that. Don't think Tony Schiavone had ever been explained the rules. The commentary team had ever been explained the rules of that match. And there seems to be a disconnect for me between what's written down on the paper for Tony Khan and then what we get on TV. He probably had written down for weeks that Phoenix and Roosh were coming back on Collision, and to him that was a big deal. Didn't feel like that on the TV. You go to, again, Ospreay goes from being in a match that was allegedly billed around who's the best wrestler in the world against Bryan Danielson, and then he comes back on TV and apparently he's interested in Roderick Strong's belt, and it's kind of like, okay, how did you connect those dots? That's odd. And then Swerve, which is the best example of all of them. Again, I think somewhere somebody's got written down, Swerve's going to be a fighting champion. That's what we're going to do with Swerve. We're going to have a match on our TV, and that's how we're going to do it. And it's like, hang on, a fighting champion like the TNT champion, has been in the past. A fighting champion like the international champion has been in the past. Like, I feel like you've done that story with a lot of your mid-card belts. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a great shout for for what you're going to do with your world champion. And it's like that level of just, I don't know, just quality control of like realizing this is important. We've got our, the first black world champion. We've got somebody who's, we're going to be putting the belt on, who needs to be elevated to that top level. Let's go all hands on deck and let's get him there. And instead, it feels just a little bit half-baked. Dynamite was terrible. Collision was better. We had the promo to kick off Collision. I was 50-50 on some of the content of the promo, but I was glad it was there. Glad it was in front of a big crowd. And then in the main event, he goes 50-50 with Claudio, and he just kind of felt like, any other champion. I think it just maybe just crystallizes my overall issue with AEW as a whole, where that didn't necessarily feel to me any more important than what was going on the segment before it or the segment after it. Do you get what I mean? There's kind of like this.
Oh, I do.
Just this mush of stuff on the shows, and a lot of it's good, but none of it feels more important than the other. Like, is Swerve defending the world title against Claudio more important than Ospreay going for Roderick Strong's belt? It doesn't feel like it, because Ospreay feels like the hottest wrestler, we were told, the best wrestler in the world, coming off the pay-per-view. And he's interested in a mid-card belt. Like, there's just so much shit that just happens. Yeah. None of it feels more important than other. I think there's a lack of emphasis on follow-up in AEW in general. I think they've got an overwhelming problem with just hierarchy and what's more important than each other, which creates, for me, kind of trying to put my finger on it this week, what's my issue with overall AEW creative? It's a lack of investment, I think, because you don't trust in the things that pay off to matter as much as they should, and you don't trust in the follow-up to matter as much as they should. And even when individual segments are good, it's to the back and we're right to the next segment as well. Like, it's like a lot of stuff that in theory on a black and white piece of paper probably looks and sounds good, but there's a TLC and a care, I think, that needs to go into it when you actually see it on TV to make Swerve feel like the most important wrestler on the product, to make narrative sense that Ospreay is where he is on the card, to sell the fact that it's a big deal that, Phoenix is back in the mix and he's not just another guy, and to sell the fact it's a big deal that Rush is back in the mix, that it's not another guy. But Tony Khan is minded such that it's like, well, the segment will be good, match is good, what's your problem? And I know a lot of the fan base go along with that and are fine with that, but I feel like it's these little things that are always missing with AEW for me that, like, I've never been clearer than in this last week, where even less so than ever, Tony Khan's like quality control just hasn't felt like it's been there, because he's got his eye on so much other stuff.
And I think if you look at the ratings, a lot of the time, inflations from the NBA or NCAA tournaments, you take them out of the mix, like those, or the Big Bang Theory, and you really start to think like where the problem is you've got all of these great wrestlers, but then they're not featured enough. They're kind of just in and out, and it's hard to gain. I think it's just hard to gain that level of investment, because what annoyed me about the Swerve bit was I'm going to deliver a promo and basically I'm just going to do the same thing that I did on Wednesday. And I was there thinking, like we say about the workhorse champion, that story, and I was like, world championship matches should be special. I'm not as mad about having them defended on every pay-per-view. And it sounds like I'm channeling my inner Matty here. But the idea, for the most part, of Roman Reigns' defenses being big events, I like that aspect of it. I like the fact that it's the world title, so people should spend time working to it rather than just walking out and having a match. But the fact he was given that TV time, I thought, oh, that'll be good. And then it was like the match itself towards the end, yeah, it was good, but it was, I'm struggling to remember it now. And I only saw it yesterday. So like, it's just like, it was fine. Like they did some like good spots, and it was pretty long. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff he doesn't feel important. And what is Will Ospreay's motivation? His motivation should be headlining at Wembley. Who's that going to be against? It should be against the world champion. So that's really the direction you want him to be going. And instead, it's like, is he going to have the international championship? And if they fucking just want to get rid of a belt for shits and giggles and merge it, then fine, whatever. Like, you could do that, but is that?
But you
really
do that. You're adding to Swerve's uphill battle, because again, I massively rate Swerve, and I think he should be the guy. But like when he's competing with the fact that Osprey has one, if Osprey has one of the B-level belts, as well as, you know, a long-term star in Adam Copeland, as well as, you know, an all-time wrestler in Kazuchika Okada, like, can you really make the argument that he's the most important? You know, Moxley's got the IWGP belt and he's on TV, like, because everything means the same. Nothing is more important than everything else, and that's when your chickens come home pros. Everyone's got a fucking belt. That's why Swerve's wrestling Kyle Fletcher and beating him and has no interest in the ROH TV belt, because nothing really means anything, does it? It's just trinkets and, you know, reward trophies that everyone's got and up and down the promotion.
We're parroting stuff that really we said about 18 months ago. We're going to be honest on this, and it's coming through. It's coming through again. And that was a period where there was like, it was like, there's too many belts and it doesn't mean anything. Everything's a title match, so it all got incredibly confused. There's too many people. Again, there's too many people. There's too many people trying to fit in, and it's just like, right,
you can't give a Phoenix you know, a proper shot window placement because you've got 30 other wrestlers to save, and Phoenix only appears, or you know, he's back from injury, but you know what I mean, these wrestlers only appear when Tony Khan just remembers, oh fuck yeah, I haven't booked him in a while, I'll put him on TV. People just randomly come and go, and that's all the reason it is. It's not really thought through. Oh, why you know, why is Shane Taylor all over the TV right now? Because he's currently Tony Khan's, you know, hot thing, like Brian Keith was a few weeks ago. Like, you know, Daniel Garcia can be and then isn't. Like, you know, Sammy will be when he comes back. It's just, that's the thing. It's just that lack of organization, that lack of just making things feel like they matter. And again, for a lot of people, good wrestling is all it takes, and you'll get good matches out of all of these combinations because you can just shake up the AW roster and throw them on TW random button, and you're gonna get great matches on the TV in front of fans that want to see that. But it's these little things that make you invested, make you actually care about the, you know, one segment more than another, and care about, you know, creates a sense of how many pay-per-views do we go into with no sense of anticipation, despite the fact we come out of it going, that was fucking great, wasn't it? Like, it's all linked to this for me. It's all that bigger issue.
And I think audiences have kind of got wind to it. It's just like, it's a lot of stuff being thrown at you with some like sort of big set pieces. It's, dare I say, it's kind of almost like, it feels like The Walking Dead towards, like, to a certain extent, where it's just like people fighting zombies after a while. It's just a soap opera that revolves around some zombies walk in, and they'll get very close on occasion to your main character, and they'll turn around and go, oh, stab them in the head, and they're gone. And I think there's a lot, like with AEW, there's just like a series of stuff that happens with this
Sopranos
cast.
With a murder, everybody. It's work rate crash TV. Is what it
Sopranos and The Wire. If we talk, and we should always do the TV comparison more. I'm like big on this because it's how I think audiences end up viewing this and the narratives. And we spoke about this on the grappling with philosophy on patreon.com/grapple, just to get that cheap plug in there again. But one of the stuff we spoke about is like they use narratives and stories in order to kind of like develop it, but they've also got quite tight casts, and it expands slowly over time. So those people who come in are kind of made to have meetings, so like a Cutty in The Wire, or is it Brother Mozone, if I remember his name right? Like these are people who kind of come in and out, and they're like, oh, okay, they're starting to mean more and more and more. And the problem is they're just fucking. Imagine they all appeared exactly the same time on episode 3 of The Wire. You'd be like, whoa, slow down. Who's Prop Joe? What's going on? Like. You'd go mad, and instead it's just like it's a narrative problem. And the thing is, I thought they hired people for it. We thought Will Washington was going to be helping with this. Thought Jen Pepperman, when she comes in as well, like you're getting a bit more of a writing team about this. And I think they can't see the wood for the trees at times, because it's just like, what are the long-term stories they're telling? And you want that long-term investment, because that's the thing that's rewarding, and it's the thing that's worked best for them.
Will is someone I spent, you know, almost 20 years of my life listening to on podcast. I don't know the bloke, but he's a lot like Tony in that, like, he'll like Tony have the headcanon of like, oh, this is why Shane Taylor's in this spot, because on March of 2022 he had this match against so and so, and it all makes sense in the end. And it's just like, I don't know what the battle is going backstage, to just get that displayed on TV, because you know at the end of it, Tony Khan as presser will go backwards and explain all of the reasoning for why Will Ospreay's in the mid-card going for this belt, or for why Rush had this match on Collision, and that's where he came back. It's just, it's doing that extra bit of explaining it beforehand and having it on TV and emphasising it. But I mean, yeah, that is my issue right now with AEW. It's kind of like, it just kind of washes over me as like a product that don't have that investment in individual things, because, you know, that kind of, those little bells and whistles, call me old fashioned, are kind of what I need to do that. But I will say, you know, there was good stuff across the two shows this week, as far as Collision and Rampage go, as far as highlights go. I did enjoy the Phoenix match. He looked a little bit rusty, but it was good to see him back with the, what's he called now, the Monster Modos. You know, it's always good to see him, whatever we're going to call him this week. But, you know, that was fun. That felt very, you know, a lot of it feels very Nitro, to be honest, like for good and for bad. You know, Nitro would do that too, and you know, they did in some ways took advantage of the great lead in. Like I say, Swerve opening the show was definitely a plus column compared to what they did with them on Dynamite. You only get one chance to make a first impression, but hopefully, you know, some of they got a 0.49, was it, for that opening 10 minutes, and like, we were well over like 1.2 to 1.3 million people saw Swerve. That's great. Fortunately, we followed it up with a bit of a meaningless trios match, but you know, AEW is going to be AEW. That's organisation for me. I almost feel like I would have just went straight into Swerve and Claudia if you were going to put it anywhere on the show. But that match was good. You know, once we got there, I enjoyed seeing Grizzled Young Veterans as well. There was lots of enjoyable stuff, at least across the weekend's TV.
There really was. And that's the thing about it. I was watching it, I was like, I'm enjoying this, but I'm simultaneously disappointed. And it's just like, I don't know what that is. Just like, it's Schrodinger's wrestling. It's good and not good simultaneously. Which one is it? And it completely, like, and there's arguments for both. Just to say on the Grizzled Young Vets point, I thought they looked really good. And I thought they looked really good in terms of like, just in terms of the way they carried themselves and everything else. I was thinking, if Max Caster is anywhere near the form that he was on a couple of years ago, Liverpool and like some of the recent results, that would have been absolutely cast iron in his like kind of promo on there as well.
Did you hear McGuinness? He called Gibson a true brew Liverpool supporter. Wrong words, mate. Wrong words. Nigel knows as much about footy as Zach Gibson does, and as much as I do. That's
inexcusable. I find that inexcusable.
I did enjoy. He'd very clearly had a conversation with the lads backstage, because he got into commentary a couple of good lines about Zach Gibson's became a wrestler because of an errant tackle in his young days when he was trying to be a footballer. Complete bollocks, but works as a story. I wanted, to your point, JP, I want to see. I didn't want to see Max Caster cut a rap. I want to see Gibson cut a promo against them too. And it was a funny little debut, because it was like, I think it all got them a job. I think they went out there. They are professional. There's a lot of wrestlers like, we're professional to a fault. They're professional to to their credit. Like, they're just so good. You could tell Shivani was impressed with them, and I'm sure they're gonna get a contract, if they want one. Gonna get a contract out of AEW with this. But it also felt like the people who put them on TV didn't fully understand the act they got. Because if you understood that act, you give Zach Gibson a mic and you let him go back and forth. It's not the end of the world, because you can do it in future weeks, but he hand Max Caster his ass just with one promo. Instead, they were just a wrestling tag team, like all of the other wrestling tag teams in AEW. So that was the negative. But I think if they get them under contract now, or at least bring them back for more dates, I think maybe they'll get them a little bit more and give them that little bit more trust, because they definitely earned it here.
I think they definitely earned it here as well. I thought actually their moveset, their double team moveset, I was like, my God, they've come on. Like, they really have. Like, I mean, we say about James Drake as well.
He's good.
He is good.
So much grief from us in the early days. We were part of the Boot Boys on him. You know, we were arguing for different people to be Gibson's tag team partner, but like, you know, tag teams are the sum of their parts, and he plays his role. He absolutely does.
He does, and he absolutely, like, he lives up to it. And you just think, I want to see these guys there. And because the tag division needs it as well. Dare I say it as well? Like, I just looked at Daniel Garcia and Katsuyori Shibata, and I just thought, fuck it, make them a tag team. Just go with it. Like, have them both.
We drop the text gimmick. Can we drop that? Like, I drives me unreasonably mad, because he's there. Types like he's written one word and a full sentence spits out every time. Like, somebody teach him how phones work. Like, he's a great wrestler, Shibata. He apparently doesn't understand. Like, you can't just press a button and it spits out a sentence on these translate apps. Might just unreasonably bother me, JP, but like, drives me mad.
This, I'm gonna go kind of against you on here. I think there's weirdly something that could work if the material was funny. Like, for a start, he'd speak into it rather than type. That would just make sense. and he says this, and then it comes out with something like just generally quite weird. I think there could be some potential in that at least, but like you say, the texting does throw you out of it, and it doesn't work. But I just thought that's the problem. I'm saying put them as a tag team, not because I want to see them as a tag team. I want to see Shibata as IWGP champion, if I'm going to be frank, and that's something I'm going to keep on banging on about. Why? Because he's back, lads, and he's your lad, and he'll be there rescuing the company anyway. I digress. But if you got him in AEW and you're not doing too much, you don't want to fully commit, just put him in a tag team with Garcia, because it's a division that's weak, and it could do with a few kind of teams in and around it. And I think Grizzle Young Vets should definitely be one of them.
Definitely want to see more of them in the company. But yeah, other notes than that, like I say, Swerve Claudio lost the crowd a little bit, I felt like, towards the end, and looking at the quarter hours seemed to unfortunately the monster opening quarter didn't follow them to the final quarter, which maybe tells you something about that match. Again, might have done better just as a Paul Heyman type hot shot, but good.
Yeah,
bell to bell match, but again, I think Swerve is going to need more than good matches to stand out. If that's his bright idea about we can be a different world champion, somebody needs to make him watch the product and realize there are many men who've done that gimmick very recently. So yeah, there was that. I'm going to say other highlights from the show and Rampage, I suppose we can go into. I did think the best friends bottom up brawl was really good again. Those matches always deliver. Like, I'm not necessarily into the best friends as a feud or something to, I'll let it go now, but open your Dynamite with last week. But when all is said and done, like, it was another great, like, bloody brawl. It's always different when you... When did WWE do the first ones to do that? Was like, I feel like Mark Henry was involved, or Ken Shamrock or somebody. That one where they circle all the cars and they have a fight in the middle. I feel like that used to be a thing they do, but when they wheel it out on AWTV, it always, that the LAX match I think of as well was, a match of the year, contender of the year that happened. The best friends, for their faults, are very good plunder wrestlers, and this was another good one.
There's that, and then that arcade brawl they had. That was like that's the thing that they do. I kind of got the vibe that Chuck Taylor might be retiring, of which this kind of where this story is at the moment, and I wouldn't necessarily think. But I thought it was really good. Like, in the main, I thought it was as much fun as I could kind of expect from it. Didn't they record it after Dynamite, and it was sort of 2 a.m.
Apparently Tony Khan was there with his neck brace and his coffee.
I did think to myself, I don't want to hear anyone complain about money or anything else. We shouldn't spend this on catering. If anyone moans in that, if you've got 4 or 5 cars, you're just happy to trash for reasons as well. That's always been the thing that's bothered me. It's always it's a more money than sense match, as much like a parking lot brawl, because you're just smashing up cars. And it's not like they're already rusted shit heaps or anything else along those lines. But yeah, I thought that was good. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about the
any of the highlights. We'll keep it brief, but
yeah. Do you know what? I think overall, I was starting to get quite tired. I think when it got into the Deonna Purrazzo Thunder Rosa match, but I didn't think that was bad. The Big Bill, I'm just disappointed what they're doing with Big Bill as well. And it's it doesn't help. I'm assuming Ricky Starks is off. So why wouldn't you have them two together? That was an act that just inexplicably worked, or anything else. Unless it was the greatest reveal, it'd just be, turns out he is with Ricky Starks, and they just get rid of Jericho for good. And they just beat him and he goes off TV. That would be the best route for that. But I thought Rampage is fine. It's just interesting. It bounces around schedule so much at this point, because it feels like we're talking about it as part of a 3-hour block a lot. And I know there's basketball, because there always is, but at the same time we'll have the same when the hockey comes into gear as well, won't we? We'll still have those kind of things going on. So yeah, I thought
they'll be tempted to do that.
Yeah, Rampage in the main, it was fine, and yeah, Anthony Ogogo as a commentator. There we go. That's better than a wrestler, mate. That's why I'll definitely have him.
Well, to get into how they did, obviously, Saturday's collision, obviously, with the lead in of the NBA playoffs, did 621,000 viewers on TNT, so up 35%, so it worked. Doing it as the big lead in show. Did the 0.21 in the 1849, up 61% from last week, best they've done since July last year. And yeah, as we mentioned, with the lead in from the NBA Meltzer report, at the first 10 minutes of collision did a 0.49, and I've seen the graph that Brandon Thurston has put out to patrons, and it's a gigantic leap, and then they kind of stick around a little bit for the trios match, and then they're gone again by the end of the show. But anytime you can get the show in front of a bigger audience, I think it's good, and it's better than the last time this happened, when I think it was Chris Jericho that was on screen, and the entirety of NBA Twitter were just making fun of the absolute state of them. At least they avoided doing that this year. And yeah, collision, to your point, JP, did benefit a little bit. 293,000 viewers. It was 26% down from last week, to be fair, following the last time it followed the collision, but still, time slotted in on a Saturday night with the gigantic Real Sports competition. Not as bad as it could have been. 8.09 in the 1849 as well. But to get into some other AEW headlines, JP, we did have Tony Khan as well in his media blitz, responding to Bill Goldberg, saying that Bill Goldberg did originally want to work for AEW. Apparently appealed on something called the Superstar Crossover podcast. Said that Bill wanted to work here. I met with Bill several times. Bill was looking to work here. I had a lot of nice meetings with him, and he just says a lot of nice things on. It's all about timing, and we're doing a lot of exciting things right now. And yeah, kind of puts over the fact that Goldberg had wanted to come into AEW at one point. I wonder what happened there. I find it odd that Bill Goldberg says that AEW's product wasn't serious enough for him, and he was working Bray Wyatt last WWE run.
Oh yeah,
bit of an odd one.
I think he's saying it's too cheesy. We don't need to worry about that, Bill. He won't be going more than 5 minutes, mate. And it's not like he'll be knocking around watching the entire show, will he? I always feel this ship has sailed, because there was a point in time I think you would have done it, and you would have done it against MJF at his hottest.
You wanted him all in last year.
I did. I didn't want to see him and Adam Cole. I feel I've been proved right in the fullness of time.
I think Wardlow was there after. I wanted Goldberg to squash Wardlow. I think.
Goldberg,
or the other way around.
There. You're doing that kind of spectacle, all those new eyeballs. You do something like that. He is a big time wrestler, but I feel this time around, like, you'd be bringing him in order to try and get a reaction. And that is such a dangerous game if you end into it. It doesn't take away, like, getting in Goldberg isn't going to solve any kind of issues. It could be fun. There's of the couple of people he could be in there against, but I don't know. I feel WWE, he's had as good an Indian summer of his career as he ever was going to get in WWE. Just do that. I think of Bill Goldberg in a positive light in his last WWE run, because it knew where he fucking stood with those matches. That was never, I just thought that would never be a thing after the disaster of a run that he had before. So
definitely. Other quick AEW news. Apparently Camille, who's been a free agent, said on Twitter she's been signed since February. Fightful Select are saying, and she's slated to join AEW. Any interest in that, JP? I think you would have found in the NWA days. Yeah. She's got something. She's got presence. She's obviously got the look. I could see them making something work with her.
Do you remember her and Layla Hirsch on AEW TV?
Good point.
Yeah, there was.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was like that meme, wasn't it? The tall person and the short person. Yeah,
it really was. And this is the thing with her, is we've always thought that there's something, like, she was like the one thing in NWA. So nearly a Freudian slip there, going to TNA. But she was like the one thing they had where you go, this person kind of has a bit of potential. But they always had her under that kind of long-term deal. But she'd outgrown it so long ago, and it makes sense. Like, you kind of need all hands on deck. Again, if you're bringing her in, bring her in as an enforcer. Like,
they're quietly building a bit of a women's division,
They are.
Say. Like, I mean, the other news story we got is that Julia Hart's been Sardar with injury, so she's going to be out for a while, which is a shame because she was offering something good there.
Yeah.
But like just quietly, they're building up. There's a little bit of depth to it at the minute. Whatever you say about the Mariah May, Toni Storm stuff, like that's over. Deonna Purrazzo's, in the mix. You've got the Thunder Roses, started getting used again. So all these little pieces kind of coming together right now with the
Serena
division. Serena Deeb, yeah, that's the other one. And Garrett's favourite, obviously, being in the mix. Glad she got a second chance at a promo on Collision after the either randomly cut one on Dynamite that nobody could hear. But you add Camille to that mix, and yeah, it's a nice little variation of different characters and different things to be invested in. Never mind the Willow and Mercedes thing, which maybe they can get something out of if it goes the place we all think it's going. There's a couple, I think Ryan says here, good shout, Ryan Monroe, the YouTube member, says there's more than 2 stories in the women's division. Yeah. It's just a low bar to clear right now, but there's stuff going on, whether you love it or not. There's attention and stuff.
I feel like I'm going to completely contradict what I was only saying a few minutes ago when I was talking about it. There's too many titles. There is one obvious glaring missing title out of all of the ones they've got, and there's about 5 other ones. If you think, I'd happily trade in the FTW, the international title, what's the other? The trios. Let's just put them in the bin, or just put them on the Flippy Lads Top Flight and Action Andretti and do stuff like that. Pretty much Ring of Honor TV title and Ring of Honor Pure title for a women's tag titles. Simply because you have wrestlers, it's a way of telling different stories. You build up friendships and other things like that. They would be the main things that you do, and it's also a way of covering up people who are that bit greener. But it's something that they've just steadfastly refused to, and instead he's made new fucking. Actually, sorry, I forgot about it. Put the Continental Champion crown in there as well. That's a waste of fucking time. Just have that as a tournament. But yeah. Yeah, and it misses that. Yeah,
don't say it, JP, as Will says there. I'm not having it new belts, but yeah, maybe. But there's depth there, and that's good. That's a good thing. I was gonna say another wrestler update right now in AEW. I don't trust this one, JP. We get an MJF update, not just about his hairline. Apparently he was in Turkey, wasn't he? Do with that what you will. But yeah, apparently PW Insider saying he's still working to recover from his multiple injuries. And yeah, he's obviously they've been the World of 2024 stuff. Fucking nonsense. I won't even give that any attention. But yeah, saying he was obviously we had that report that he was in Boston meeting with AEW officials, and we've had mixed reports on whether if he's going to come back, that he's had surgery and therefore it's going to be no time soon. I mean, AEW announced a pay-per-view in Long Island in June. I mean, that's where he's going to be, innit? Like I feel like some fake news is getting banded about right now on the MJF front.
Yeah.
JP, I don't know about you. I don't know if I believe a word of it.
100%.
He'll be back,
exactly that. Yeah, he'll be back. He loves a tan. Heading to Turkey is a good place to get one. I'd know. I'd also hope he picked up some slightly hooky football shirts, because that's always been a particular joy of mine when going to Turkey. But yeah, there's like that feels like a work, because he's the kind of bloke who would do it. And Adam Cole is walking again, so it's like they're gonna want to tie that around.
Yeah, that did the same thing with him.
Building to All In, where they have the big return match, but it isn't the main event. Thank Christ.
Oh God, that better fucking not be a 45-minute match over
piss break.
Yeah, drama rather than a hug. I suppose it's better than that.
It's a singles match, dare I say it? That wasn't a fucking endangered species at All In, wasn't it? Now let's have a mismatched trios match. Yeah,
I'd say as well. Like he posted, I think there was a video of him with that knobhead Brock Lesnar guy on Twitter, and of course, he's looking worse for wear. He's got his arm in a sling, and he's selling it still in front of the crowd. Don't buy it. I think he'll be back. But yeah, last quick AW note. I'll let you lead this one, JP. This is big hire for AW. So hired a new senior marketer of live events. Tell us about that one.
Well, exactly. On here as well, it was a guy called Jeremy Flynn. I now thought for a second it was Jerry Flynn, who some of you might remember as being a WCW jobber in the mid-90s. He revealed on his LinkedIn profile, it's interesting how news is broken that way these days, says a man who's looking at his LinkedIn stuff a lot, which is quite worrying. It feels like it feels like a sign that I'm giving up. Anyway, I digress. He's accepted a role at AEW because he was Senior Director of Marketing and Live Events with the Professional Bull Riders. So, and I imagine they do decent numbers as well. But the last thing I saw with Bull Riders was actually Dallas Buyers Club. So hopefully it doesn't end up like that in there as well. But yeah, he's gone to doing live events for all Elite Wrestling. Is this part of the infrastructure that I have stressed for such a long time needs to be built? Possibly. Might be there, but yeah, it's a bit wild. I don't know. Going from bull riding to wrestling, though, that feels like somewhat of a natural fit in America. Let's just hope he knows some fucking arenas, but they do like stadiums and shit because they're bulls and you need a massive amount of people. Can't get a bull in the Monaco ballroom, can you? Like, just like
they try.
Crack on, lads. Indie bulls. So I'm thinking.
IWC balls.
Got them.
But yeah, he jumped out, like Sir Tom says here, CV jumped off the page. That was wild. But yeah, professionals in professional places. That's what AEW should be striving for. There's been
professional bulls to professional bullshitters. There we go.
That is that. Lightning foot Jerry Lynn, Simon says here. But there's been a lot of like that talk like over the last week or so, mostly thanks to Joe Lanza and the work he's been doing, kind of digging into why WWE have such an advantage when it comes to media relations and just general grown-up stuff in the grown-up world. PR is a thing, folks. WWE did not invent it, but they seem to be doing a much better job than AEW right now, as far as like having the media dancing to their hymn sheet. Le Gentle, is that the name that everyone's learned?
That's
this
the
week?
one.
Basically, people have learned this week that PR is a thing. Joe Lanza's done this great nuanced work on it, talking about and it's obviously a positive because that's what a proper company should be, and this is where AEW need to catch up to WWE, and it's just turned into like George Soros, like Le Gentle, like he's a blame for every bad thing that happens to AEW and every good thing that happens to WWE. But like it shouldn't be spun. There are negatives to it, obviously, when there's horrible stories like the Vince stuff, and they're trying to bury that in the press, and there's dirty tactics like trying to make the overnights get the overnight numbers out there, specifically when AEW look bad and WWE look good. I've seen it for myself. It is a thing that absolutely happens, but again, part of being a professional company is having good PR and having professional people who do those types of jobs, live events included. This is all stuff that a company that's going to get the types of numbers that we're expecting AEW to get on the next TV deal should have in place.
And they need to have it in place because there's a double-edged sword here. Not only is it like a good thing for them to as a company, they're a company that need good PR, particularly with the Vince story going on and that kind of being a shadow over the company because of how indelibly linked. As he should be. As we said earlier on, as he absolutely should be on here, and still has his shares on sale, doesn't he? By all accounts, but
allegedly,
they need. This is like it's like the PR firm that he has hired in order for that, because that's what this is. It's a battle of PR, and that's how you kind of win this stuff, and you can end up like completely changing the narrative on so much stuff, and it's what AEW have kind of lacked, and it's just that I always think I would describe it as infrastructure. It's a multiple people involved in various different departments. Why? Because it's potentially $1 billion company. So you would do that. You would put them into place if you were $1 million company. Like in many ways, like you like that. There, it feels like it's still very fly by night and decided by like very few people. If one bloke doesn't turn up to work, does the whole thing go to hell in a handcart? And not having
Nick Jackson's
like,
wife,
PR people as well.
There's no match.
I almost feel like I'd want to speak to Steph. Like I'd want to hear, like I'd be interested, like with Steph, and it'd be dealing with, say, a WWE PR team as opposed to dealing with an AEW PR team, and the massive differences in the kind of quality control and things like that. And I think that's the kind of thing that they don't have in place. And I get why they didn't. They didn't need to for a while, but they want to move to the next level. You need to have this in place. But yeah.
We're talking about a company, JP, that in the last 6 months, one of the wrestlers' wives was still heading up merch. Whatever the practical day-to-day were, that that obviously wasn't sustainable to be a company the size of AEW. Like we joked about it before, like, you know, didn't really get into it with the Grizzly Vets. I'm fucking sick of the sight of the Acclaimed. But I will tell you, the reason the Acclaimed is still on TV and still a pushed act, despite how stale they feel, is because all of those more casual end of the AEW fan base who go to those live shows, go to any AEW show, they'll be one of the most over acts there. And those fucking fans who go there and love it and chant along with that stuff, like, honestly, AEW could be a doubly profitable company if they just had, like, some fucking foam fingers in the crowd. I've heard Robert mention it a few times. You know, little things like that. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. Obviously, it's not that big a deal. But, like, those little things, you notice it, you go, fuck. A more grown-up company would be taking better advantage of how over that act is, and now, you know, the stale as fuck, and I'm sure you'd still sell a load more of those foam fingers, but you didn't see them at shows. The merch situation was always a joke at shows, and you know, yeah, we found, you know, looking at the live events business, looking at the bad attendance, looking at the types of venues they've been running, all of these things have come. You know, when they were hot, a lot of these things were covered up and weren't really talked about, but a lot of these infrastructure things, as I said, JP, have been laid to bear this year.
They really have, and it's all part of the growing pains of companies. But that's when you need like a group of people in place. That's when you have series of managers. Now, maybe between, I think I want to say his name's Morphy, the one of the senior vice presidents they brought in as well, and I know he had a live event perspective on there. Jen Pepperman, various other people. You're hoping that they fill that category, and they're the ones who manage to get him going and manage to kind of get the company thinking in a much more proper way. Because the way WWE do it, it's horrible. Don't get me wrong, because of how I feel about WWE. It's a machine, but my God, it's well done. One thing you don't worry about if you go to a WWE event is there going to be any merchandise on sale? Like, oh fuck yeah. That's not a case.
You still see bad reports, even though they've improved things. It's still not great. And again, it's not the biggest thing, but you know, in the chat there, Steph saying night and day as far as air involvement with, you know, the media on both sides.
Yeah, and that's
so there we go.
Yeah, there we are.
Well, okay, moving on from there, as you kind of alluded to. We do need to talk some WWE and some what's going on with Vince McMahon. Is he selling his shares? Is he not selling his shares? Let's get into it, JP. The short answer is nothing's changed. A lot of speaking of the media, a lot of irresponsible reporting, I would say, over the last week or so. Brandon Thurston, of course, being the grown up in the room it takes to step in, because there was some reports about Vince McMahon's gone now because and it was very interestingly timed. Speaking of the subject we just mentioned over the weekend, when you know, all of the Tony Khan stuff was going on, we started hearing rumblings that Vince was completely out now. He sold all his shares. As Brandon Thurston rightly says here and clarifies in his tweet, his shares have been listed since September. Nothing has changed. While attention is being paid to it right now, and Vince has made sales, nothing has changed in that regard. The Nick Khan thing did raise a few eyebrows. Again, nothing has really necessarily changed there. Nick Khan hasn't actually sold any of his shares in TKO/WWE. However, they are all for sale, so that got a little bit more of attention. Brandon Thurston points out, you know, whether that means Nick Khan is leaving WWE. Well, our focus should maybe be more on the fact that his 5-year employment contract expires next August. That's a story to watch. But yeah, apparently his TKO stock promises him millions of dollars in equity, some already vested, and that some of his compensation is paid on stock and performance. So yeah, even if he sold every share he could as soon as possible, he'd still have, you know, a direct financial interest in the performance of TKO due to his performance compensation and the millions of shares that he will get, you know, in due time as well. So a lot of over-reporting over nothing, JP, but it did bring maybe a little bit more attention to a story we should have all, you know, been aware of.
Which is fascinating, because let's face it, how will Nick Khan be viewed in the business world? He's be a massive success. That's what he would be, and that's because he is. And he knows what he's good at, and he's fucking great at it, which is pulling off deals. And he's got one more deal, hasn't he, really, for WWE, which is what happens after Peacock. Because let's face it, Peacock won't be around at that point in time. So where does that library, you know, where does that go in the meantime? And I think for themselves, like, he's done kind of pretty much everything he can do with them. You know, it's it's interesting in terms of his deal being up, but I could see a lot of people being interested in him, whether it's kind of like sports leagues or anything else. Like I could see there being people thinking, hang on a minute, this is a guy who gets enormous deals, which is the job of a lot of of people within his position in real sports. Like you think you get him in there, you offer him a massive wedge, he will get so much kind of publicity. You just got to pay a small fortune for it as well. And it's leverage that he has over the company as well, and TKO, because they might end up viewing him as essential, and he gets a much sweeter deal. It's either way he wins, I always feel, with him.
Yeah, and he says he's made wrestling feel less carny, which is impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, he's brought a professionalism to them, but then at the same time, as Brandon Thurston says here, we should be paying attention to what do they know and when, and will that blow up in his face? Will he see out this contract and move on and go into the sunset before any of this engulfs him? There's a very clear effort on WWE TV right now to paint the company as being the Triple H company, the Paul Levesque era, all of that stuff. Nick Khan's kind of like this ghost in the background. The fact that Cody even shook his hand at WrestleMania from Rob felt like the type of thing that would annoy him. I think he wants to stay, where he is. He wants the credit for the good stuff, but, if the shit hits the fan anymore or more comes out about what he potentially knew around, the Janelle Grant case, which sounds like, from the bits we know as corporate officer number one, he did know things about the case, and it's not going to take much digging to get more on that. Maybe he'll jump before, that becomes, clear as day. I could absolutely see that happening. Like, it was funny, I was even watching Raw this week and seeing, like, I don't think I'd just tuned into Raw a couple of minutes late every week when I've been watching it. I didn't realise Triple H was now doing the Then Now Forever Together intro. I felt fan made. Nope, it's him. Making sure that Triple H is in charge of this all of the good things that you see in WWE going forward. There's almost a battle for credit going on between those lads, and be interesting where the pieces land, JP.
Yeah, it will be, won't it, for that? I mean, fucking hellfire. I mean, it's it is, you are getting that feeling of it being obviously like the Triple H era. Nothing spells Triple H era like this kind of lackluster Backlash card that we'll be talking in more detail about on the weekend show as well. Where
I've just got on a note here, Backlash looks wank. It does.
Fucking hellfire on there as well. Doing competent wrestling booking like he has been doing for the previous week with the draft, which they will never get me fucking interested in or even remotely looking excited about, because it doesn't fucking mean anything.
Well, before we get to the draft, do we have any updates on like the legal case or anything? It's been pretty quiet, hasn't it? The last week.
I think it has been.
Waiting on more responses, aren't we? Middle of May is the deadline for the individual parties.
I think that's it at the moment as well, and it's like everyone has made their statements, and they've got, obviously Vince McMahon has got his legal team together, he's got his PR team, as we mentioned earlier on as well. That's very much like the kind of state of play. Like I think it's going to be until mid-May, and then at that stage, and we've always said this with this case, is it's never going away. There's always going to be updates on, like, generally on a weekly basis, and I know that that's something we always make sure, like on the weekend show, it always feels like, oh, hang on a minute, there is always a few
usually something's dropped by then.
Usually, a few stories, and it's always
the side or something, you get
towards the end of the week, and that's it. And it's going to be at the point about when this goes to grand jury, is this something that's going to end up going to trial? And then it's whether or not, this bullishness from Vince, which I imagine is to try and intimidate, I'm going to be frank about it, intimidate Janelle Grant into just taking a settlement and going away and just being that kind of like, it's going to be a horrible campaign. And I absolutely fear the worst of what a woman is going to go through, because it's going to be horrific. Because there's some proper bulldogs involved in this who are going to tear into her reputation and other things like that, because
a lot of this
way.
Yeah, will be fought in the court of public opinion, and it's going to get dirty before it gets nicer for sure. But on that note, that is of course the most important thing, circling WWE and whether they'll get further dragged into it, as they likely should. But we will talk the on-screen stuff as well. Raw and SmackDown from the last week, don't have any particular notes on either of them, because It was draft season, JP. And you know what I found out, JP? Even if Papa H is now in charge, the King of Kings himself, the King of Cunts, as I christened him earlier, it's no fucking better, is it? How shit is the draft? It still fucking sucks. It's not. I don't think it's hard. Like, I honestly think, like, WWE have done a good job over the last while or so of making consequence, I suppose, to whether you're a Raw or a SmackDown guy. Like, a Raw guy appears on SmackDown, you get a telling off from Nick Aldis, and you know Adam Pearce is right behind them to scold you as well, and you get fined a fake amount of money. And they've done a relatively decent job of making Raw and SmackDown feel like different entities while still having the cake and eating it too. You know, it's like all things in wrestling, it's all a work at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be a shoot for it to work. And it's definitely worked better than it did during the Vince McMahon years, which for me felt like a layup to do a decent draft. I just wouldn't have done it now. Like, I can't believe, like, it's just so on the nose, you know, because it's already so daft that they're all sat there like behind computers pretending it's like the NFL draft, and you've got fucking Teddy Long and Bubba Ray Dudley, you know, trying to work out how to log onto Windows to help Nick Aldis make his latest pick. It's already a bit of a joke, but it's so on the nose to do it while the NFL draft is going on. And it's so on the nose to do it and, like, think it's going to help you rating-wise to do your own draft while the real drafts are going on the other networks, as much as they wanted to push that fake news out this weekend that they were neck and neck with the real draft. No, they fucking weren't. So, you know, it feels like a bad time to do it as well. I want to give it 6 more months of letting things settle, because then at the end of it, there isn't really anything to analyse, I think, from Raw and SmackDown. It's like everyone pretty much ended up where they were before, with a couple of odd exceptions. It's like, again, they don't even seem to understand the draft. If it was purely drafting the hot stars from the last year of NXT, and you built that up and you made it clear that people might only be in NXT for a year, because come draft time, they might get pulled up to Raw and SmackDown, you could make it work. Instead, it's like, oh yeah, CM Punk's still on Raw. Sound, he was on Raw anyway. Like, and what? Like, there's so much of that. It's like, I just still don't. Maybe it's because Triple H doesn't follow real sports either, but they don't really understand what a draft is, and they'll never make it interested. It's still red t-shirts and blue t-shirts, to borrow a phrase from you.
Yeah, it is. That's all it ever is. And I think the problem with this is it's the quality control. It should be that, like, only a few people are drafted. And people maybe want to get drafted because they're going to be in higher positions or anything else at particular, like whichever brands they end up on it. But also as well, it's weird things like the LWO one pick. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's a bit weird, isn't it? If you're just wanting sheer depth of it as well. And it's more the only things you take from it. Who are the people who get called up, and are they a surprise that some of those people get called up? So you go, Carmelo Hayes? No, not really. Blair Davenport? I suppose, but she's been around there long enough, hasn't she, as well? It doesn't feel like Giovanni Vinci isn't with Imperium anymore. Could I care? Not really.
Interesting.
Ilya is interesting. Yeah, you're right, actually.
Yeah,
I mean, where he, and that is the thing, at least what you would say about this if you take, and again, I have no interest in the draft at all, because I just don't think it has, like, it just doesn't have enough meaning for me. For TV shows that I don't really watch, is to have like is the through line from NXT onto the main roster. That's very much in play. Like people like Lyra Valkyria, they're not afterthoughts or being like brought up. I suppose like they're going to be sticking around for a while. They're not just there for shits and giggles. Yeah. And it was time. I mean, Ilya had done his kind of stint, and it's really, you put him on the main roster. There's the story with him and Gunter at some point as well that obviously
you seem to be leaning into that. Obviously, taking Fabian Eichner or whatever they call him these days out of Imperium opens up a slot maybe, or he comes in as a babyface that works Gunter. They're already teasing something happening with them too. That could interest me, but outside of that, Braun Strowman's on Raw, sound brilliant. We got that, yeah. But for me, sins, I watched most of Raw today, and it really was like the biggest thing I'd say about the draft was that, like, for an already drab build to this Backlash pay-per-view that's at the fucking weekend, it made it even more drab, because it was just a lot of a murderer's row of kind of benign picks. And the only thing that was interesting on the TV this week, I thought the Drew McIntyre and Punk stuff was good. Punk seemed to lose his place a little bit in his back and forth with Drew, but I continue to enjoy that program. I think they used the draft quite well for that, in that Drew was moaning about Punk getting drafted before him. Easy story that you can tell, and then it let Punk cut a promo on him for 3 minutes where he didn't say much of anything. It's probably low praise to say it was the best thing on Raw, but it was by a country mile. So that continues to interest me, but that's a match that's not on the pay-per-view this weekend. And as far as what is on the pay-per-view this weekend, there wasn't much that this week's TV did to get me much interested in it or invested in it. The card right now: Bayley versus Naomi versus Tiffany Stratton. So there's a payoff there for Tiffany Stratton. Kabuki Warriors versus Bianca and Jade Cargill. Kevin Owens and Randy Orton versus Solo and Tama, because they've been giving Tama the big shove on SmackDown. JP, Damian Priest versus Jey Uso got the big push at the end of Raw this week. They had Jey Uso be the #1 draft pick, which was an odd choice, but I guess they're trying to sell that that's an important match, or at least to see the logic. And Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles continues to not be that interesting of a match to me. That feels like a random match if AJ had signed for AEW. Tony Khan would have put Cody in on a Dynamite with no build, and I think WWE kind of doing the same thing. Really, it's a bit of a shame, really, because again, all talking about JP, but this time last year, Backlash was Puerto Rico, wasn't it? And they got away with one there. It wasn't a Roman Reigns led show. It wasn't a gigantic show, but it was interesting and different. I feel like there's been diminishing returns with these international pay-per-views, and that they're just relying on that too much. They know it's going to be a hot crowd in France, and that'll do. And it'll be a weird time, so we don't have to put that much effort in, and it doesn't quite feel like a WWE UK pay-per-view, but it doesn't feel far off, really. There's not much consequence there for me.
Well, to paraphrase someone who is from France and Roland Barthes, this is very much the spectacle of excess, because that's really what it is, isn't it? It's following a very formulaic. I hadn't planned that line, I promise. It's like it follows like a very formulaic card for what you'd expect. I look at this and I go, okay, there's very it's very obvious who between Cody and AJ. That's there for Cody to have a good match on a pay-per-view. You put in AJ Styles, it makes sense. I think you put in Bianca and Jade to beat the Kabuki Warriors because you have a title change, which would then show this, which then demonstrates to this audience, no, it's a show that has meaning, isn't it? But it's very much like it's there for spectacle. It's there for WWE is in France. But the card itself is just, for the most part, it's just like, this isn't really it's all pretty low. It's all relatively low stakes. There'll be a shit ton of ads that have made a shitload of money. It makes them look big. It's an international pay-per-view. And I suppose the match for me, dare I say it, where my interest is mainly there, is the Kevin Owens and Randy Orton versus the Bloodline match. I'm not really interested necessarily in it, because I've seen enough Tama Tonga matches to last me a lifetime. But it's just more, how does he do in this environment? Is he going to be motivated? Because that's always been kind of when we thought of him in the past. It was only really towards the end of his New Japan run that he started to pull his bloody finger out. But this is just like your paint by numbers international card. It was the same for Elimination Chamber. Some of this stuff will do a job. Like you say, we're a world away from Puerto Rico because that crowd was just one of the best fucking crowds is there as well. It's also, I don't know, in many ways you think Kevin Owens should be in a much bigger position because you'd want someone to be. I would have thought he would be. French-speaking
guy. Yeah, it's odd.
Sami Zayn.
Yeah, you'd have him in a bigger spot. Yeah, it just feels like a missed opportunity. Yeah. Will says here, it's not on pay-per-view over here, which is interesting. Obviously, you still can get pay-per-views over here. We know it's not, at least for public broadcast, as far as live events, but doesn't look like it's going to be on any form of is it still called Sky Box Office, whatever they call it.
It'd be on TNT Box Office.
TNT Box Office, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Either way, I would be buying it.
Yeah, there might be something to that, but I mean, it takes us nicely into kind of the next news story, which is obviously that's not the only European pay-per-view. There's 3 of them this year. There's the Bash in Berlin later in the year, and before that there's a Clash of the Castle, which is obviously coming up too. And they've got a story here about WWE being unconcerned about it not selling out yet. A lot of us were expecting it to. 14,000 fans were apparently in the queue on Ticketmaster, in the queue for tickets on the pre-sale, JP. But still yet to sell out. I'm seeing a lot of complaining from people as far as the pricing goes. I was at a GPW at the weekend, as we talked about on the pre-show, and Ben Britt was away days was telling us how he bought combo tickets for 2 days, like something just under £200 or so once you factored in booking fees. Even Matty was looking at him like, fucking hell, mate, you paid that to go to Clash at the Castle. But like, yeah, it's you look at those prices, £175 at the cheapest end to almost £3,000. A lot of the tickets that seem to be available now that I've seen are in that £500 price range. I don't know. I think they maybe should be concerned, JP. I feel like they're counting on something a little bit there, on a pay-per-view that's going to be running, during the Euros. It's going to be happening while Scotland are playing, aren't they, on the Friday?
Germany.
Scotland, Germany's going head to head with the WWE Scotland pay-per-view on the Friday night. Feels like with the SmackDown taping, not the pay-per-view itself, but the SmackDown taping, and they're selling them as combos, so that's going to have an effect on sales. And then the pay-per-view's happening on Saturday, amongst the time when European fans are going to be swept up in the Euros and everything that's going on with the footy. I just feel like they've badly kind of thought this through. I think on the one hand, it should be a bigger venue, because the demand is clearly there, but then on the other hand, you've got to price it to that demand and price it with the concept that we're in a bit of a cost of living crisis, and also price it with the fact that there is that real sports competition going on at the same time. I feel like they've kind of fucked it in 3 different ways there. In that they might have gotten away with this. It was another time of year somewhere else, and there wasn't all that going on. Maybe they could have charged this and sold out, or maybe they could have, just ran a different time. I don't know, but something's not been thought through, I don't think, with this plan. Never mind the fact that it's a Clash in a Castle that doesn't exist.
That's it. I think the big problem they've had here is that because I think ultimately, will it sell out? Yes. Should this have been an automatic sellout? Yeah. Shouldn't have even been any kind of debate. But instead, it's like they've pushed this pricing far too far. And it gets to the point of those people are going to go, how much do I need to go to this? That's going to be a big part of the issue. And obviously then there's a pricing and accommodation and all other things like that as well. But you look at some of the prices on here, like they're obscene. To give you the comparison point, I know obviously the all-in tickets are out. I'll be waiting to the absolute last minute, and it'll be cheap as chips to go into like Wembley. Well, London chips. So probably, if you're talking about 38 quid, then that's probably about right, isn't it? But the prices here, like when I saw them on here, was like sort of like 400 quid and whatnot. And Ticketmaster are bastards with the amount that they add in for their sales as well. Like there is a problem. It doesn't mean, unless these shows actually have proper meaning and have like proper stakes to them, they're going to struggle with this stuff, because ultimately they've just done a house show tour. But it's like, that's really what like a lot of this feels like. They've got the cameras out as well, and are meaningful things going to really be happening here as well? But madness. I wouldn't be. Got floor seats at Wembley for the fucking cheaper price of what like the back row is. It's like half the price of what the back of the bloody Hydro is.
Yeah, but to be fair, even Wembley, I've heard that like some of the pits people sat in, the prices are way up this year. And if you can sell them, that's always the Meltzer line, isn't it? He's got here that the £390 is the cheapest tickets, and Meltzer always say, well, if you sell them, that tells you like that's all you need to know. If they sell, they sell. But I do think there's also that knock-on of, you got young fans and families who, you want to encourage to come to your shows. That was a big part of the All-In push last year, wasn't it? With the family tickets and the cheapest tickets being, £25 or so. You want to allow for people like that to be able to come as well and not price those people out and not, leave them with a sour taste in their mouth of what they've got to pay. And if you combine that with, like I say, the timing of it, and there is going to be a lack of interest. I think they'll probably be all right. I'm not certain they're going to sell it out. I think there'll be tickets available. People might get in a little bit cheaper if they hold on, which I wouldn't have expected. I would have expected that a bit of a day one sellout. But we'll keep track of that as we do all-in tickets as well. We'll go 1 for 1, JP. We'll make YouTube videos out of it. It can be our next big thing. But I was going to say, speaking of Scotland. We do have another Scotland-related WWE news story before we move on. Apparently, speaking of him being on Raw, Drew McIntyre has signed a new contract with WWE. How do I know that? Well, the way you always know these things, JP, in that The Rock gave him a sword on Instagram.
As you do.
I mentioned the Punk and Drew thing before. I'm enjoying, that story, but I feel like there was there was an on-screen story and parallel to Punk, in that if Drew was threatening to leave, then you could make that part of his character. Nah, just signed the contract. He was having I don't know if you saw the video, he was having a nice dinner and Rock came over with it wasn't even Rock, it was like one of his representatives came over with a nice sword and a note, and Drew said, "Thanks, brother," to the camera. That feels a little bit like the proxy war we're talking about, where there's if I forgot about Rock when I mentioned it earlier, the battle for power. Nah, Triple H got his mark picture at Raw last night, but Rock pipped him to it and used a big old sword to do it.
Good lad. And it's the least surprising contract signing in the world as well. And even the sword part is somewhat expected, isn't it? And let's be honest, I'm much happy. I'm weirdly all right with The Rock doing a few of the Mark stuff like this, like this sort of stuff with people signing than Triple H. I'm just sick of that. But at the same time, it makes absolute sense that he would re-sign it. I never really had any doubt for this one because, my God, the AEW need him. I'm sure you can make some sort of justification, but no, they don't need him. He's doing the best work he is in WWE. He's found his character. That's what I feel about Drew McIntyre, and that's the battle in WWE. It's just actually he means something, and he there is that kind of connection. And now you've got a really good, interesting story with him, particularly after the Damian Priest cash-in and stuff like this as well. But it works. He works for them. He's going to be getting an absolutely big wedge as well. And I feel like Gareth's going to end up really kicking off at me about this, but I feel he's earned it. He's earned the right to this big money deal in his career. Why? Because he's actually timed this run incredibly well with his contract coming up.
Yeah, now he can put his feet up. He can stop being entertaining again, and go back to the Drew that I was bored with before this current run. He's still a 3.25 star wrestler as far as in ring goes. But I really enjoy his promo work, and I don't think anybody in WWE is a draw right now. And it's hard to split that pie up as to who deserves what. But as far as on-screen performers, I can't begrudge him. And tied to that story, Will mentions there in the chat, despite what lies in their Lion magazine suggest, The Rock is never late for anything. I have to throw this in, JP, as our and finally WWE story as WWE have come to Dwayne's defense. Apparently there was stories floating around that he was 3 hours late for WrestleMania 40, and has been chronically late. I don't know if you've been catching up with this. It's the Wrap that originally posted an article about production issues around The Rock's film Red One, due for release later this year. Film cost $250 million to make, and apparently production issues, including The Rock's chronic lateness and lack of professionalism, are said to be the reason for it going over budget. He'd show up to sometimes 8 hours late on set for the film. Apparently, it was also tied into wrestling an issue with Mania 40. Apparently, two insiders told The Wrap. That's not something that's been recorded in the wrestling press. And of course, there's that man, Chris Legentle, saying that Dwayne was not only on time for WrestleMania, as he would say, he was hours early to help with rehearsal. There's been a few other positive stories dropped in the press about Dwayne as well. Great employer, helped me. Got one unnamed source mentioned that apparently he's he, because The Rock was late all the time, it meant he met his union hours and therefore got paid a wedge more for the film. So he's happy. But it's definitely a bit of a PR battle going on, and there's that name again with Dwayne. Jabaya.
I do absolutely buy it. Him turning into a bit of a diva, all the stuff you told me with him and Vin Diesel and all of that power play stuff.
Vin Diesel have a take on this, I bet,
Oh, absolutely. In this day and age, I think this is something that's going I'm assuming it's going to be in the cinemas as well, but because it's Chris Evans in there as well. I'm looking at this proper big Christmas film, but would it surprise me? No. I don't think any of this is any of a surprise given how he is.
Did you see that bit? Sorry, I left that out. Will mentioned there apparently pisses and bottles.
Oh, I did hear about this.
and production assistants have to dispose of them. I mean, that's true.
So
That's
he
not
could
great. Don't know
Well,
about that.
you can afford. Right. How far are the trailers from the sets, given the
True.
amount of money that they're spending? $250 million. No one should be slashing in a bottle. No one. They shouldn't. They should literally be wiping their asses with tenors. It's almost like the complete opposite should be having on that. He should be lighting up his cigars while taking a shit with like a £50 note. Like this is that stuff is just kind of. I don't know if I could believe that, because that just seems like just odd behaviour, and there's much more of a cry for help aspect, I think, with that part of the story there. But will I watch Red One? I mean, when he does these kind of films for a Netflix, he did a film for Netflix called Red Notice, which I'm really hoping never wins a Dwayne Johnson movie poll, because obviously we've just done that on the Patreon as well for Double Dwayne. Ties in nicely. He would have been that Dwayne, skinny Dwayne. He'd have been there well on time, like he would have done on Southland Tales. Looking forward to work, cracking on, But instead, I just think there's enough of these stories that go about. I'm more inclined to believe that this is the kind of bloke that he is. I don't know. Yeah, I'd expect him to.
Well, he's trying to combat it with some positive press, as coincidentally they put out the press release that Vice TV kind of ties into some of what we've been watching this week, JP. Reveal the premiere date for The Rock's Who Killed WCW docu-series. So you just search the word Rock, you don't get piss in a bottle. You get a WCW retro series that 7 Bucks Productions are working on. 4-part docu-series on the death of WCW, that story that we've never heard anything about. But yeah, in November it was revealed as a production company was working on that. Date premieres on June the 4th on Vice TV. Rock, Danny Garcia, who was a name that got dragged through the mud in some of those Rock stories, as did Hiram Garcia, and Brian Gowert serving as executive producers. And yeah, we'll obviously Rock's production company worked on Tales of the Territories. Remember that in 2022. And yeah, we got a bit of a Rock spiel about it. The iconic rise of WCW, blah blah blah. We'll see how it falls. Do you think it's going to be more Brian Alvarez's book, or do you think it's going to be more WWE documentary? What are you expecting out of this, JP?
WWE documentary. I've got little to no hope that this is going to be anyway decent whatsoever. I mean, Tales of the Territories, I don't know. I thought it was very kind of underwhelming, because it had that Legends Roundtable kind of feel to it, with the same old boys bullshitting the same old stories, loving that stuff. Except there was no Pat Patterson chain smoking a pack of cigarettes the entire way through it as well. This one, what is the new take that's going to have on it? Are they going to? They're not going to talk about like it's going to be like that Monday Night Wars, and it'll be. I don't know why they just don't put that series on Vice TV ultimately, because I don't know what new they can add to this story. They can get the usual round of talking heads, and because of his involvement in WWE as well, like literally having points in the game, he's going to have more access for this Vice stuff. So I suppose in that sense, it's going to have a degree of like kind of interest. Will I watch it? Sadly, yes, because it involves WCW, and I'll be all over it, like documentary wise. But I don't have high hopes.
No, me neither. We'll watch it. I'm sure we'll review it week to week.
Yeah.
Might even tie in with our month gone idea. Maybe we could tie that in around the time it comes out. Maybe that would actually tie in quite nicely. So, we say, I was sick of everyone talking about the death of WCW until we have to talk about it, and then it's evergreen content that I'm sure we could manage.
Right.
I just want to look at those last few weeks of Nitro. I always liked the last couple of months of WCW. We'll see if it holds up maybe at some point. But yeah, look forward to that coming. And yeah, just the thought, JP, with the other miscellaneous stuff we've watched, not a huge amount this week. Probably makes sense to go from a documentary story to documentary corner. I haven't caught this yet, the Dark Side of the Ring from this week, but I've got a GPW to talk about. But yeah, I know you saw Sensational Sherry this week on Dark Side of the Ring. How was it?
I thought this was really good. It's really sad, is what it is, and I think it's really sad because it's such a strange story. He is like this ever-present part of so much of like my wrestling fandom, like as being obviously the complete opposite to Elizabeth. Yet I also feel like I knew absolutely nothing about her when it came to this story. And I feel a bit, I don't say ashamed is a strong word, a little bit disappointed in myself. I was like, but when you thought about it, you thought about her as a manager and how she was as a performer, particularly in that like early 90s WWF. It was incredible, absolutely incredible for all of the stuff that she did. And it tells, again, it feels like sort of similar to the Harley race, but I think it's even kind of sadder. It's about the idea that effectively she kind of abandons her son for the most part to go on the road for WWF. And he's interviewed on it, but he's really ill. Like he's had like, I want to say he's had like cancer of the mouth. It feels like he's partially had like one of his jaw removed, and he must be a relatively young man. And it's just like, it's sad for that to be the case. And in terms of her story, just her kind of like iron will of trying to kind of get into kind of wrestling. And one of the better talking heads is probably Medusa, who's on here as well. There's no like Booker T or Stevie Ray. There isn't actually relatively little Harlem Heat stuff. And obviously because there's no Randy Savage, it's much more Jake Roberts and Rockin' Robin, who obviously are brother and sister. And it gets dark because they talk about like Grizzly Smith like kind of keeping an eye on her, and they're just they're just going, yeah, the thing is like they were worried about her, but you know, she wasn't young enough for him. And like, it's like, that's their dad that they're kind of talking about there. And the fact that Jake Roberts, and it talks about the relationship he had with Sensational Sherry, which kind of makes sense. If you told me about like those two are going out at some point, you'd be like, yeah, that'd be there. But then it's a lot of it where she basically just like walks out on her marriage and her son, and it's not like completely out of her life. And you know, the son's got a very good relationship with the stepdad, but it's really like it's like it's what she kind of gave up in order to do this. And then it gets to the point where when she's in WCW and they're talking about her, and it's like Bischoff releases her for doing drugs, and it's like the amount of guys in WCW who are on stuff, but it's Sherry Martel who has to go, and that's kind of the end of her career, and it's really sad. But it's more that I didn't know any of this stuff, so it was almost approaching it going like, wow, how many Sherry Martel matches have I really watched? Because it appears to be the bulk of her wrestling matches is the AWA, and she's someone who, as a manager, when you think about it, she is one of the great managers of all time. Like out. Not even she'd be in that top 5. She'd have to be. It's just kind of like
goes that conversation about heat. I think about like the early 90s as a kid watching WWF and like not really realizing why I hated her so much, and like how important a character she was to like the Shawn Michaels act and just in general, you know, everyone she worked with, Savage included during that period. Like she really stands out, you know, as far as like a memory goes of like an important character when there weren't many female characters. She was the, you know, the other side. I've seen like the promo for this episode. There's Liz on the baby side and there's their hair on the heel side, and she was perfect to be that yang to the yin that like Elizabeth gave like WWF programming at that time. And yeah, again at a time when there weren't many other women there, like she massively stood out. I was shocked as anything, to be honest, that like she was 49 when she died, so that was 2007. Like, you say that she's one of them many people who like WCW goes out of business and you just don't think about it again. Like WCW goes out of business in 2001 and she's what, you know, 41, something like that, and it's like she's somebody from a bygone era that couldn't possibly have done a WWF appearance, you know, in the early 2000s. Maybe that says something to, you know, how we view women in the 40s versus men in the 40s, unfortunately, especially in the wrestling industry. But like, I'm sure she could have offered something like during that period, but you don't even think of it. You just think of WCW's gone, so she's gone too, and she's from that 90s era and couldn't possibly have still been around. But yeah, that's the shocking thing for me. At that point,
it is, and it is like she completely disappears, and then it's into a world of it's the old like sort of very true sad tale of wrestling, of getting into things like effectively like kind of pain pills and Oxycontin and whatnot, and then it's just completely
dark side of the ring bingo at that point, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it
sad
really
is
is.
to say.
But you think of like, could she have? if you put her in as like a kind of like a face manager in somewhere like TNA in 2004, 2005, would have been absolutely fine. You think of the fact that WWE used Vicky Guerrero, really, in some ways, you think kind of like, you know, there's a Sherry Martel style role that would have been there with her as a face, where people are going, nah, Sherry's cool because she's hard, she's tough. And obviously they talk about the kind of bumps she takes and the fact she took bumps. And she took proper like kind of bumps as well. And didn't know she had like, they talk about the Moolah interaction as well, where she was with like kind of like in the Moolah camp and stuff like this as well. And she kind of like ended up going out on her own as well at the same time. And they put the title on her. But yeah, there's so much of this story where you do remember, you suddenly go, why did this person disappear? She's so much better than that, and we should be treating her with so much more reverence and respect than kind of what she is. And even Dark Side of the Ring, dare I say it, she's like think of all of the Dark Side of the Ring figures before we've got to Sensational Sherry. She's a much bigger star than 90 to 95% of those people when we think of it, of the time when she was performing as well. And it's mad that I was just thinking to myself, like, I don't really know enough about her. And it's like you said about women over 40. It's the same thing in Hollywood, where for a long, long time, women over 40 weren't getting any kind of decent roles written for them. Now at this point, and you know that has changed. I'd say to a fair degree. But yeah, hopefully, in terms of Sensational Sherry, like if you haven't seen it and you don't know that much about her, like in terms of who she actually was as a person, definitely watch this.
Excellent. Well, something people shouldn't watch. That I've unfortunately seen a little bit of myself, JP. TripleMania also took place this weekend. The very big show. Monterey, this one, yeah, Monterey.
Yeah.
That's where TripleMania was. Me. The funniest thing of this, all you really need to see is the image of Nick Nemeth with the AAA mega title to see the absolute fucking hole that AAA is in the year 2024. That booking genius Carlos that I imagine we're going to talk about on that Impact show, showing itself once again. How much of it did you see, JP? Was there an N? Was there an army? Were there any highlights and lowlights people should check out?
Right. I watched the beginning. I didn't see an army. I didn't see two. An urn would have been nice, let alone two. It's amazing how much you miss the urns until they're not there. I didn't see them on the bits of it I've seen. This is a hard show to watch. It is. And we spoke about this on the weekend show. This card feels like if you put this card on, like for pretty much for 2 years ago, just take it, Nick Nemeth. It's exactly the type of show they would have done. It's just that everyone is older and slightly worse at this point as well. And we've got Nick Nemeth against a laughably underprepared Alberto Del Patron. No, it's his first match.
Yeah, he like at the bit I saw that. That's what I saw that match. And he's wandering around in a t-shirt that doesn't fit him, that's like rolling up like throughout the match. It's like that was what I was watching, like how high was it gonna go by the end of it, like. And yeah, he's sleepwalking his way through, and Dolph Ziggler, who like the commentary's trying to do a job of building him up as being like this fucking legend from WWE and this guy who's like hot right now and working everywhere, and this guy, but they basically have to introduce him because he's not done any AAA and he's just come in, won the mega title, and now he's fucking off. Like, what? Like, if you're gonna do that, at least do it with somebody that's not Dolph Ziggler. Just unbelievable booking, and it felt like doing a time jump back to 2010 or so, or whenever Alberto El Patron could be asked back in the WWE days, because he really couldn't do it.
No, completely. Like he's awful, and I don't know what value he has. Because I don't even think Mexican audiences are remotely interested in there as well. Just imagine you put Psycho Clown in there. I'm not that bothered about Psycho Clown. He's over though. It feels like he would be something else. But this was just like, let's recreate matches from a very middling period of WWE. Here you go. You've got this one here. It was was very, very lazy. And I mean, then put the title on them.
Oh, you muted.
Probably.
Oh, Robot JP.
Bollocks. There we go. Is that any better?
That's better.
That's better. We got there in the end. It's amazing we've gone this far before we made the 2 hour mark before there's muted. There we go.
We're selling merch now. That's what we're doing.
Exactly. But yeah, it was just, I mean, I had no expectation it'd be good. And it really wasn't good in any way, shape, or form. But I just think it's how bad. After seeing some CMLL, and by God, like that match between Phoenix and Taurus, I like to call him by his OG name, that was infinitely better than anything I saw on this show, which was, from beginning to end, just absolute dog shit.
Any particular lowlights? Like I say, I only saw the main. I skipped through the copy that I don't know how well this is done on Fight, but where I saw it wasn't Fight. I've got to be honest. It wasn't the best copy, but it just looked like a lot of shit being thrown at the wall, mate.
Yeah, it is, as it always is as well. And it's about Canadian Ian, and it's 3 matches on the way out. That's where
he's done well, and he's getting 3 retirements. That's all right.
And he is. I didn't watch it because I didn't watch that main event because I just thought, I'm assuming it was shit. And everything I've read about it was. I did watch, I have to say, because I think the interest for me that I had is Jeff and Satnam Singh being there as well. Who I thought,
missed them.
God, good lover. Well, I just thought, at least he's going to get some use there. He's a big fucking lad, Satnam. I don't know if you've seen the gif of people diving through the ring ropes to kind of go at him and he's just brushing them off to the side. And you think, there's that part of me that holds out hope of like, he could do something. And weirdly, he kind of gets the character stuff more than a lot of other big men wrestlers have done. And he's not, God, I mean, he's better than Great Khali and everything else there. But it was the team on there, wasn't it? It was like Parker Boudreaux was there. You would never bother with him. Let him wrestle in that. QT Marshall, having him, Sam Adonis, and Jeff Jarrett on the same team, he should just be a heat magnet, but he weirdly isn't. Yeah, exactly. It's just like people doing the most generic USA gringo like wrestler stuff on the outside. But it's it like there's nothing on this from what I've seen on it where even the opening, even that Copper Bardal. Do you know who wins it? It's Pimpinella Escalata. It's like it's the usual kind of like just bullshit. And then there's some old lads in like the undercard stuff. Like who is it? Oh fucking like Dr. Wagner Jr.'s there as well. Tigre Blanco. It's just like lazy stuff. Like for the most part, yeah. I worry about it. If you're watching Lucha, watch CMLL.
Yeah, I think we've learned that over the last few weeks. So still not caught up with the Brian match when he was out there. Need to get caught. Maybe Weekend feels like it was 6 billion years ago at this point. But there we go. Obviously, CMLL, I've got the shows coming up with Rev Pro as well. So yeah, I'm sure people will be. Apparently, Grizzly Young Vets are aware. Is it Atlantis and Atlantis Junior? Is the match that they've announced this week. Quite an interesting little double card Rev Pro have got going on. But yeah, while JP was watching some TripleMania, we'll talk things Brit Res, and yeah, obviously we've got a couple of Brit Res stories to talk later, but. I was at a GRAPPL on Sunday. That's how I spent my Sunday afternoon, JP, out in Wigan. This will be the third time I've talked about it, so I'll keep it brief enough. We did, obviously, on the pre-show, me and Matty talked about the day out in Wigan. JP found out what a Wigan kebab is, which is a pie in a bun, which we didn't get to try, but Ewan did. So we talked about that, and obviously I had a cracking day up in Hindley with the Ogdens leading away, Ben Britrez away days, knocking round, and a few others. Alan Cheapshot, and yeah, we had a good few pints and a great day out. And yeah, the middle of it was the wrestling, which we said on the pre-show, JP, we'll have to get you down to the Monaco ballroom in Wigan at some point. The Monaco ballroom used to be the Rose Club. Prefer that as a name, and yeah, it's always fun for me. It was like a trip down memory lane, a trip back home, to go and get to see some old faces and some new ones as well. They've had 2 shows since the we talked on this show last year around July time, when they had their anniversary show, which was GRAPPL's big comeback, and yeah, it's the first time I've been able to go back and visit, and yeah, had a cracking time again, genuinely. Really fun show, up and down. Couple of like bright spots on the show as far as like young wrestlers go, that I can name as well. But I'd always say with GPW, I know I'm biased, but as we talked about, you go there and it always feels like there's just something for everybody at those shows. It's very, very family orientated, and like to run through the card, like the opener at Sandy Beach, Callum Corrie, who wrote a bit out in Fighting Spirit magazine once upon a time against Ian Skinner, who I believe we went into a lot more detail on Graps and Claps. We did a live Graps and Claps in the pub after the show where we were talking a bit about Ian Skinner, who apparently does a lot of stuff up in Scotland and was appearing in GPW for the first time as the baddie. Yeah, but like Sandy Beach is like comes out with an inflatable shark, so that tells you like, you know, that's going to appeal immediately to the kids, and you kind of get that, and they immediately gravitate towards him. And as Matty described him, you know, it's like watching John Cena in his prime sometimes with the fan reactions people get, just because they're so attached to that shark, and it's a daft gimmick, but it works so well. Like, I was watching this match go, and like, one, I think it's a shame you don't see Callum Corrie in other places. Maybe part of it's because he does, you know, this particular, it's like a, you know, he's got an inflatable shark and he's a bit of a surfer guy gimmick, and he only really does it in Grand Pro. And he's so over with those kids. Like, those kids were just living and dying by everything he did in the match. It was probably, outside of the main events, the loudest the crowd were like all night was for this, and it was for a dude with an inflatable shark. And we were saying, like, Matty was like fantasy booking, you know, well, at some point heel's gonna pop that shark and there's gonna be kids in those front rows in tears over it. And that's what GPW gives you. It gives you like characters like that the kids are invested in, but the work is good too. It's not just mega slam, scorched earth, booyah spots and go home. The wrestlers that are on this show are working to a high standard, and there's, like we said earlier, something for the dads as well. And yeah, thought Sandy Beach really impressed in that. A couple of ropey spots with Ian Skinner in the bulk of the match, but I thought he looked good too. Hopefully see him back in Grand Pro at another time as well. Tom Thelwell and Sonna Dayson was on the undercard, a battle of the Ogdens favourites in there. Tom Thelwell's someone we've seen, obviously, when you were up here in Manchester, I think, for Future Shock. And I mentioned it on the Graps and Claps podcast. Very old talker boy, third young gun, all that stuff. Now he's doing like a Manchester thug type gimmick with like a tank top and like these baggy pants. Doesn't work for me. He feels a little bit lost on what he should really be as a character. I guess that Manchester Massive type stuff got over in certain promotions, and therefore he does it everywhere now. I'd rather see him knocking round, you know, with Ethan and Luke, and that being that type of like strong style young wrestler with, you know, the potential that it looked like he had a few years ago. Still very good in ring. Sonna Dayson is one of Garrett's favourites as far as like a, you know, he got that one shot on Raw with Eric Rowan, and got a rematch actually at For Love of Wrestling, which me and Matty were live at. And outside of that, hasn't really had a look in anywhere as far as like somewhere more notable than in the Northwest. And Gareth will always talk about him, talk him up as a worker's worker who can be a face and can be a heel. And yeah, the work was good there, but like I say, Thelwell kind of loses me with that act. Yeah, they had a 6-man bit of a schmoz match in the main event for the first half, only really notable for Lana Austin's brother, L.A. Austin, who's probably my favourite of the Austins, but you know, I know the Ogdens are very high on Lana.
Steve.
Character
work. Yeah, he's probably in the family somewhere. He's more related to Road Dogg, if you believe Matty and my mate GRAPPL Collie was on Graps and Claps. But yeah, he's fun. L.A. Austin. You only really see him in like Grand Pro. He's one of those, like, he's a homer for the promotion, but he's like, his high spots are really good, and yeah, he's probably the most enjoyable part of that. Don't really love the we've got your mate Big Joe, and the little one, not the big one, who looks like a bouncer, does like his gimmick's now Joe Blazer, and it's kind of like a more grown-up version of the same character. Doesn't really work for me. Obvious shelf life on the old character, but yeah, I don't know about this. I don't know about this whole rebrand for me. I've seen him maybe 3 or 4 times since he's done it now. Just doesn't really translate as well as the Crash Holly gimmick did when he was Big Guns Joe. Isaac Nork beat Damon Lee in the second half. That was just Isaac Nork's very He's basically got the look of he could be in Malachi Black's stable in AEW. They're building him up as a monster heel, and he went over Damon Lee, who's like a long-serving babyface there. So that fit what it needed to be. So we had that in there. We had Joey Hayes on the show, and Chase Alcala, and loads of shit around the Feel Good Enterprises heel stable. That was a bit of a schmoz in the semi-main event, and then in the main event.
Are they still doing that? Was he saying a Dirk Feel Good
Enterprises?
Dirk.
Yeah. I love Dirk.
There's
He's
three
a
brothers, isn't there? Like you went through.
Oh no! That was an old story. This is like they're like running like an agency type of thing, and they've got like the model on the front, and Mel Price is like the lady of the group, and yeah, it's a different world than back when we had Dirk Feel Bad, Dirk Feel Good, and Dirk Feel Worse. But good to see one of the veterans still knocking about, and yeah, main event was Sam Grabwell beating RP Davis. Really well done. Like as far as like what GPW does well, as building characters, it gives you reasons to come back to the shows, and they've been building up RP Davis. Obviously, there's a boxing gimmick, has a real life following, really, as far as like a boxer and such, and is someone who's a bit of a star in the Northwest just because he's got like this fan base that they'll follow him around a lot. You've heard me talk about him on here before, and they've been building this up as his big title shot against Sam Gradwell, who, you know, was in the headlines a little bit today with some tweets about NXT UK, and that's mostly where people will know him from. But like he's clearly, you know, but head and shoulders above the rest of Grand Pro, and comes across as a proper world champion. And you would have been forgiven for thinking they built this up. RP Davis is going to get his big win. It's going to be the big babyface title change. And instead they turned it on its head. It was a long main event. Felt like maybe 10 minutes in, we were kind of going, maybe they may be losing them a little bit here. Sam Grabwell's having to put a little bit of extra crowd work in to kind of get the tired crits in the crowd going. And then for the last 10 minutes, people were buying and dying. It felt very... Matty liked it because it felt very Cody and Roman the first time, in that it was like, well, of course RP Davis is winning here. And of course, okay, we're building up to the big near falls. And then he mentioned something, Andy Ogden pointed this out in like some of the promo packages leading up to this, that RP Davis, from his boxing background, has a history of concussions. And they did the old Shawn Michaels 1985. He's got the champion where he wants him. He's going to the top rope. He's going to finish him off. And then on the top rope, he does the Shawn Michaels, "Ow, my head cell," and falls over with the real concussion issue. Sam Gradwell pounces on him, gets him back in the ring, hits his finisher, pins him 1, 2, 3. Entire audience is dejected. You can see kids ready to cry in the front row, devastated over the fact that this has happened to RP Davis.
Brilliant.
Like, believing it's real in Wigan, that he's, you know, got this real concussion and something real has happened here that has made Sam Gradwell have to win. And it was such great storytelling, in that, you know, as much as I railed on WWE for it, you can do that RP Davis big win later down the line, but they did it in such a way that Sam Gradwell looked like a killer because he took him out when the opportunity arose. RP Davis got to look like this is what it looked like if he won, if not for this concussion issue. So he's protected too. And you can come back down to it down the line. It was really well done. They did a post-match angle with Johnny Brannigan, who I interviewed on here, my old trainer, and going face-to-face with Sam Gradwell. That's still kind of bubbling in the background. And then, yeah, all of the baby faces kind of come out to stop the dastardly Sam Gradwell, who's continuing to beat down RP Davis. And who comes out but Sandy Beach from the opener, the most popular man on the card, comes out to make that final save, bumps Sam Gradwell, and then celebrates to end the night. And there you go, your next show, where you've got your baby faces over in the opener, up against the heel who went over in the main event, and you could literally see the kids bugging Dad, going, "Dad, we're coming next time, right? We're coming next time, right?" That's what it's all about, isn't it? It was really good, really good. And there's a reason why I'm, take what I'm saying. I'm obviously very biased with my my background with Grand Pro, but like, take what the Ogdens say when we did Graps and Claps. Both of them said it, like, this is probably their favorite promotion as far as like the types of promotions they like to go and see on that like local level in the Northwest. And obviously the lads that came up from London very much enjoyed it. Loved the venue as well. It's always a cracker. Just need to get the draft beer sorted out in the Monaco, but yeah, it's always a great day out. So yeah, if you're in the Northwest, that's the type of thing you get to see. So yeah, can't wax lyrical enough about it. It's always a fun trip down memory lane for me to go visit, but they always give you reason to want to come back. And yeah, the next show is the 4th of July. So
okay,
yeah, that'll be coming up. So yeah, hopefully we'll be there, and I expect a few of our listeners to be, as well as there were a couple who travelled up for it as well, which was good to see. But yeah, don't think they were left disappointed.
Oh God, no! I feel like I need to go and see this as well. I mean, I had a very quick question about Sam Gradwell because I always thought he had that presence, and like when he was towards the end of his WWE run, in essence, you thought, okay, there's something there with this guy. Do you think there's a chance of him getting used in, like, I mean, dare I say it, a Rev Pro really is like the kind of like be all and end all of
It's
it?
funny because we kind of talked about this on Graps and Claps, in
Okay.
that like. It's funny because by tweeting today about, positively about NXT UK, he's put himself in the firing line. I will say he's very careful with the way he worded it. Not blind to the criticism that NXT UK given, but feels that NXT UK made people better wrestlers. Do with that what you will. I will say he's an example where that did happen. He's an example where when they're. You've got, despite what we think about NXT UK, if you're a wrestler and you go there, you're going to learn something, aren't you? And he's somebody who, like, it's interesting because there's wrestlers who we would argue went there and regressed. There are wrestlers who went there who kind of, are we really interested in them coming out? It's the people who you've seen come out of NXT UK and fire on the types of indies that we watch, or the types of indies that, to be blunt, have got a worldwide, eye on them that people outside of the immediate area are going to watch, like Rev Pro. The people who've done well are the people who, maybe had that kind of rep from other things before, your Mark Andrews, people like that, and Flash Morgan Webster subculture has managed, I think, to kind of revamp their image and be a bit of a fixture on Rev Pro shows, on Impact shows, and continue to seem motivated and look good. There's a lot of examples that aren't that, and there's examples where you're willing to give the benefit of the doubt because it's like, sure, Samuels was in NXT UK, but we knew him before that, we'll forgive it. With Sam Gradwell, it's a funny one because he didn't have that exposure anywhere else, and if he turns up in a Rev Pro, what's the first thing you think of? It's NXT UK. And unless you're doing Elmfield No More, I'm not sure that's a positive for him. I don't think there's there's not another line where it's like, yeah, well, NXT UK, but he also did this. People haven't really seen him outside the Grand Pro in those types of shows, the types of shows that are, watched worldwide and watched on the internet, and, outside of like the family show environment, like what I'm talking about here. But yeah, that's what the lads from London were saying when we did Graps and Claps. Like, yeah, you could picture them swimming in a Rev Pro and doing well. It's whether you can get past like that. He has got that, that NXT UK name attached to him for probably for worse in some ways, even if he seems to believe, and I think most would believe it made him a better wrestler.
I think he could use it for some fire, for some heel promos though. Which is like the better kind of character for him, and I'd always say
lean into it. I can picture that. Because he's getting enough heel heat today from his tweets, and it's not that I disagree with a lot of it. Obviously, we are the podcast that will point out all the fucking many negatives that NXT UK brought to the scene, and obviously there's all those obvious ones about the way the scene is now compared to what it was then. Yes, some wrestlers got better, absolutely, in certain ways, and a lot of wrestlers regressed, and it kind of became a retirement home for a lot of wrestlers. And it's like anything, is it? The people who've come motivated out of it, like, grizzly young veterans, you forget about them being kind of part of that scene, who have managed to stay relevant and hopefully going to sign to AEW. They're the types of guys you look to as good examples, and there are bad examples out of that system, and plenty of them.
I would just think as well, with Rev Pro being much more of a national promotion than they ever have been at any time, like Manchester shows, like, call me old fashioned, I'd be bringing in plenty of guys from that area as well. Obviously, building around Luke Jacobs is a kind of like an absolute no brainer, but at the same time, someone like a Sam Gradwell, they're giving enough goes to people, and like you said before, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I need to see the Zoya matches, I'll be honest with you, to get kind of like a real handle on how good that guy is. But I think someone like a Sam Gradwell, he just always had a great look. There was always things about him, like, as a look, I thought, this is a guy who looks like a professional wrestler.
Yeah, Regal loved him for a reason. I mean, I won't say more than that, but there is that. But yeah, obviously the reputation of NXT is far worse than than that. It's been interesting. I can't believe there's been another. What year is it? And we're talking NXT UK on the Twitter timeline. Things were very clearly better before it happened, but yeah, maybe some positives can be pulled out of the negatives as well. But Well, we move on. While we're talking some stuff going on in British wrestling. British wrestling doesn't need saving, JP, because I'll let you handle the last couple of stories here, JP. We've got a fantastic, gigantic debut happening on the British wrestling scene. There's plenty to be positive coming up this weekend.
I mean, in answer to the question, where won't I be on Sunday, the 28th of July, 2024? I will not be at the Electric Ballroom. Why? Because someone who I would say, and I don't say this too lightly, one of the worst professional wrestlers going at the moment, Danhausen, will be there as well. Like, I do not give a fuck how many T-shirts this guy has sold. I don't understand it. Do you know who sold a lot of T-shirts and wore face paint? The Insane Clown Posse. They were inexplicably popular as well. It doesn't mean they're good. And Danhausen very much falls into this camp as well. And by God, is there a company that is going to buy absolutely into it? So I will not be watching that. I can't even imagine how bad that would be as well. I'd be, if I was there, and I do like to stress, I won't be there. I would just be sat there with my head in my hands going, I feel quite ashamed of me. I've paid money and this cunt is involved.
Britta's died for this, JP.
Fucking awful. Awful.
I mean,
if you like
him, go anywhere,
explain to me why. Explain to me why. Just explain. Oh no, this is what he's good at. He's good at selling T-shirts. I couldn't care less. That doesn't make for entertaining wrestlers.
That's progress now, though, isn't it? What else is on the show? Yeah. This is the show with Bussy versus fucking British Bussy, Alexis Falcon, and the other one. Like, if you're paying to see that, then you're probably paying to see Danhausen, aren't you? Like, that's their audience now. It's not for good. This is the flip side of, did NXT UK make some wrestlers probably better as far as, like, some of the mechanics go? Yeah, footwork got improved. But a lot of, young promising wrestlers kind of went there to die and didn't push on from then, and the scene was left in such a state that this is what Progress is now. They run comedy acts against comedy acts, and honestly, probably a good move for them. Like, considering what they are now, JP, Danhausen's gonna, like you said, sell a load of merch, and they're all gonna laugh, and they're all gonna think what a great show it is. They're gonna say thank you, Lee, and they're all gonna go home happy, thinking that's what BritRes should be. I mean, it's an indictment compared to what we used to go and see live, and what we can still go see live. You go to Rev Pro, or you go to some of the other promotions that are still putting out good stuff, but this is the obvious accumulation of what Progress shows are these days. Serving up slop to people who enjoy slop. That's what it is. And I don't even actually hate Danhausen as much as you. But I just know what it'll look like when he's in Progress. Actually, I don't hate him sometimes when he's appeared on AEW TV, but I won't argue with you. I understand why you don't like him. But I cringe when I think of, the shite comedy he'll be doing with, like, Alana Rustin or whoever in Progress.
Imagine
guarantee match, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's not. I mean, I will just. I wouldn't even want to be in London that day, just on the off chance you bump into him.
He's Phil's best mate, though.
You'd be like,
get on with Phil.
I know it. Phil's got a fucking blind spot there, isn't he?
Never used him on Collision, did he? Isn't that interesting? Phil had a lot of power.
Get him signed to WWE then. Use that. Use that concept. He's not good. But this is always the case in point. He comes into a company he's very popular. He never got out of Ring of Honor pre-shows. When he was in AEW, it was like, very popular, T-shirts being sold. He never got involved in, like, he couldn't be in matches because he just no good at wrestling. Sorry, he isn't any good at wrestling. The end. Like, I look at this bloke, honestly, and I'm just like, fuck me. I couldn't even. That'd be like a version of hell. I feel like that'd be Malcolm McDowell in A Clockwork Orange, being strapped to a chair, having my eyes held open with his matches going on. Just be giving up. It's like 1984, and it's like the rat running towards his face, just with it. But it's got a Danhausen face paint on it, and I'd just be like, I love Danhausen. That would be me. He wouldn't be Big Brother, but that's the only way I could ever get any kind of enjoyment on there as well. But something else that I probably won't get any enjoyment from, because I'll bring this up at the same time, Best of the Super Juniors, which I'm going to confidently predict we will see none of, and I'm not even certain we'll see the finals, because that's how little faith I have in it. However, there is a few changes. There's no Raisuke Taguchi.
First time in 18 years or something, did I read? 17 years?
17 years for it as well. And it's, in some ways, it's a shame because his best performance, he'd normally have one very serious, good, he's a good veteran who knows how to wrestle juniors rather than just incessant arse-based offense that he's been over the last few years. So he's not going to be there. He had a bicycle accident. These things will happen as well. But he's been, irony be if he's hurt his arse actually on a bicycle accident, which can easily happen as well at the same time. But he's been replaced by Dragon Dia of Dragon Gate in there. So that's interesting, just from a promotion point of view. And there's someone else who's also in there as well at the same time. There's a fair bit of Noah around the place, which is interesting. So you've got Hayata, he's in the A block in there as well, with, you know, and then you've got Dragon Dia in the B block. Ninja Mac, he's in the B block as well.
Okay.
I know, that's a bit mad. And Dan Maloney's in there. So I will.
Oh.
The first thing I did as I looked for, is Desperado in it? Yes. Is Hiromu in it? Yes. Are they in opposite blocks? Yes. And I thought, every bone in Gedo's body, you book that as your main event, don't you? Maybe it'll be different this time as well. In which case, you would just throw fucking every bit of cutlery you have against the wall and just scream into his face and go, stop doing this. They don't care. Move them out of the division. You've got enough of these like small lads. Use them like in a proper way. But these new names, they might make.
You're excited for Kushida and Hiromu, mate. Come on, B block open at night.
I tell you, I'll be excited if it lasts 1 minute and 50 seconds, like one of the great squash matches of all time did. Then I'll be excited. I refuse to watch that match. If it approaches anything longer than 5 minutes, I'm out. I want anything to do with it.
Fair. Well, there you go. It's happening. I might catch up with some bits and pieces. If any high-rated matches might tune in, but yeah, maybe it'll get some more talk on the weekend show. We'll see. But yeah, that's going on too. If it floats your boat. But yeah, unless I'm mistaken, JP, I think that covers us as far as everything going on in the wrestling world. Covered a bit of Brit Res, covered a bit of WWE, covered a bit of AEW as well. Anything else you want to throw out there before we get out of here?
All I will say is, I know we're going to go into plug mode as well, but I would say I'm really proud of the Grapple with Philosophy show that we did at the weekend for the Ewan Cameron King of the Mountain pick. I think it's entirely different on there as well. And as a comment's been saying there as well, I think some of the Patreon content we've been putting out there has been absolutely incredible. Just like as a level of consistency, I think there's some brilliant stuff on there as well. And to go back to the stuff we're going to be having coming up this month as well, it's going to be absolutely great. And the thing that I'm most personally looking forward to is You on Time. I think that is going to be absolutely incredible. I'm really looking forward to hearing you on that.
Sounds like my boss there. Looking forward to Richard coming in on time. Yep, that's also true. But yeah, I'm very excited for that one. So yeah, sad you won't be on the show this week, JP. But hopefully I'll do you proud and we'll have you back.
You will, mate.
For the next one as well. Looking forward to doing the homework more than anything. I'm going to be watching all hands this week. Big trip down memory lane for me. But yeah, on top of that, obviously, time coming up. Bretro will be returning as well. On top of that, mixtape with the best Kurt Angle. We're going to be a flashback review of King of the Ring 2001. We're going to have a deep cut on Triple H in the year 2000. And of course, our patrons pick, which we revealed on the pre-show, which is LAX versus the OGs from TNA, which helpfully TNA put a playlist on their YouTube. So that should be the one coming up this weekend. So get that watched if you fancy it. But yeah, all kinds going on. Patreon.com/grapple and YouTube.com/grapple. But yeah, on that note, we will call it for the show. We'll say thank you to our Kings of the Mountain. Thank you to Carl Gack, Robert Brocky, Carol Laughlin, Eddie Sarbanes, Chris Platt, Simon Mulvaney, and Ewan Cameron, who gave us the great idea for the Grappling with Philosophy show last week. And yeah, thank you to our live patrons. Thank you to all our patrons for another cracking month. Couldn't do it without you, and we look forward to what we've all got in store in May. But on that note, for me, for JP, and for Matty, and for Gareth, who's not here, we will catch you again next week.
Bye.
Good night. I should hit the button, shouldn't I?